So the existing toilets at Merri-bek Park were very old and needed to be replaced one's near the substation. The original plan was to place the toilet in a similar location at the substation. There is an underground cable from the City Power substation, and City Power wouldn't allow us to put the new toilet above that cable under the new regs, which required us to move the toilet 5 to 10 metres to the west, and there were then objections from those properties on Jarvie Street. Council then undertook a second round of consultation, which is the one you referred to in November, I think it was, and that's where we sent out 120 or so surveys. We got 23 back, I think it was.
22.
23 responses back, of which 17 or 74% of those supported.
74% of 23 is not very many people.
Sorry, this isn't open for a dialogue.
Okay, sorry, but yeah.
Supported the location in the middle of the park. We've also had a lot of feedback from surrounding residents about the lack of toilet that has existed at that park for the last couple of years, and people, going to the toilet, but in the bushes, etc. So there is a real desire for council to put a public toilet in Merri-bek Park, and there's a demand from the community for a public toilet. The location of public toilets is always somewhat controversial. Some people, most people don't want it near their property, so it's always a hard balance to find. And the last survey we did, we ran with the majority of the people that responded to the survey, and I suppose it is up to council to decide whether they wish to pause at this point and consider anything else, or whether we continue.
Thank you for the response, Grant.
Can we add that where it is going to be placed at the moment means that we actually can't use the park the way it's been used for 100 years.
Okay, thank you. We have received quite a few emails on this as well, and your thoughts are understood by council. Councillor Bolton?
Yeah, could you explain a little bit more about that point about why the park can't be used if it's the toilets are located in the proposed place?
Because there's two long grassy sections of the park, and where the proposed toilets are going is right in the middle of one of the sections, and it splits the park in half. So they're in that area normally. If you go down there any afternoon, any Saturday, any Sunday, there's hundreds of people that use that park, kicking the football, flying kites, drones,
Throwing balls to
dogs, all of that. Putting the toilets where they are actually stops people from being able to use that area in that way. It's right in the middle of the park.
Thank you. Councillors have been provided with some photos that have been circulated by email as well. And Councillor,
yeah, just quickly, in regards to the second point of the question, I've actually been down to the park to have a look at it with Councillor Riley and the officers, and I do believe it's not an ideal location for the toilet to be right in the middle of the open space. So I will be seeking leave of council to put an urgent business item in the urgent section of the agenda to put a motion on the table to immediately stop works and have a report come to council at the next meeting, hopefully. So if that is acceptable by councillors, just letting you know that I'll be seeking to do that at the urgent business agenda item.
Am I able to please ask, there are currently 2 toilets which have been decommissioned. One is close to the substation. The other isn't. It's closer to Leinster Grove. I don't understand why it's not being explored as a possibility for it to go there, and why council wouldn't overrule it for the sake of the aesthetics of the park. I know no one wants a toilet behind their house, but given this beautiful park could actually be destroyed by putting it in the middle, I can't see that you can't say to 2 residents who don't like it at the back of their house, it's actually for the better good of the community to have it in this spot even though you don't like it.
All right, thank you for your suggestion.
Thank you very much.
2 questions. Okay, councillors, we'll now move on to reports by Mayor and councillors. Mayor and councillor reports are reports of the activity of councillors in relation to events and activities and meetings or other councillor functions that council have attended between council meetings. So for this evening, there will be 1 minute and 30 seconds afforded to each councillor to say a few words. And I'll now ask each councillor in turn, and perhaps if Councillor Yildiz would like to start off.
Okay, I'll be very quick. Just a couple of things. 14 April, Zatar had a function on at the restaurant on the corner of Munro and Sydney Road to raise money for the Children's Hospital. Attended that. I don't know if any other. I think Natalie, you were there a couple of hours later. They mentioned
and some staff too.
Hey?
Some staff.
Oh, great, good news. Yeah, they were looking forward to your attendance, had the red carpet ready to go. All jokes aside, they appreciated your attendance. Spoke to the owners. Day after, 22nd of April, Brunswick City versus Dandenong Thunder, C.V. Smith. 23rd of April, Anzac Day dinner at Al-Azhar. 25th of April, Glenroy RSL Anzac Day. I attended that with you, Helen, and that was quite a interesting commemoration because it was pouring rain, packed. It was probably the biggest crowd they've had in years. The 26th of April, there was a Rotary Club dinner at Windy Hill for the Broadmeadows Rotary, and the 8th of May, we did the Oak Park sod turning, which was only a couple of days ago, and that went quite well, and it looks like they're really underway at Oak Park. So that's all from me for the last couple of weeks.
Thank you, Councillor Yildiz. Councillor Tapanos, do you wish to say
I'll be brief as well. It's been budget time, not just at Moreland City Council, but also state and federally as well. So most of my meetings have been in regards to capital works for the budget. So I've met with members of the Oxygen Youth Committee Executive about stage 2 and 3, and we're looking forward to that project going ahead very shortly. I've met with residents at the side of the Merri Creek Bridge near Series. And I'm sure that that's going to be there's going to be detailed plans presented to council shortly. And also I'm looking forward to the debate around the chamber in regards to the funding of the bridge. I've also had discussions with a lot of sporting clubs, particularly around their facilities, and particularly around synthetic pitches. And I know one of the first synthetic pitches we did in Moreland, which was the Brunswick Hockey Club, is up for renewal. So these are some of the things we need to consider in our budget process, how we're supporting our clubs and renewing their infrastructure. I was also keenly observed both the state and federal budget. And it's disappointing, particularly on infrastructure, that Victoria still gets shortchanged from the federal government with infrastructure funding, and we're not getting a lot of our fair share of infrastructure money. But I'm pleased to see that the state government is still investing in a lot of infrastructure projects that will benefit Moreland residents, particularly Melbourne Metro, that will have a stop just at Melbourne Uni, but also getting on with a lot of our rail crossing removals. So I'm really interested in those topics. Apart from that, it was Anzac Day, and I attended a number of Anzac Day activities, both in and outside of Moreland, and I'm not going to mention them all, but I wanted to mention one that happened for the first time, and that was by the Peliconian community in Sparta Place, which commemorated, and they laid a wreath at the statue they have there, commemorated the Anzac troops who fought in Greece, and particularly at Thermopylae in 1941. My time is up.
Yep.
Thanks very much.
No, you've obviously done a lot of work. Councillor Riley.
Thank you. I was very honoured to be able to participate in the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia and Transphobia, which the Council, Mary Health and other organisations conducted on Monday when you were turning sods in Oak Park for the new pool, which I would have liked to have got to. So it was a real honour to be there and see this, our diversity being celebrated by Coburg High, Brunswick High, Pascoe Vale Girls High and the Sydney Road Community School. Was just very exciting. So as somebody who grew up in that culture in a tech school, it was quite exciting to be there and see kids actually embracing diversity at this tender age. I was also able to go to the Pascoe Vale RSL Memorial for Anzac Day, which was quite moving, and followed that with a Glenroy Festival event, which is the last of our festival events for the year. So I commend the staff and all the people involved in that, and it was a wonderful sunny day. And I look forward to those festivals growing and becoming much more part of the fabric of our community. And just to finish, in my role as on the Moreland Arts Board, I was actually able to formally open my first exhibition called Flow at the Coonan Gallery, and I recommend you get down there. It's the Climate Plus Art Equals Change exhibition, and there are a number of events going around that, and I really encourage you to get down and check out our local exhibition. So it was a great honour to be there and see what artists are doing in this space. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Councillor Martin?
Thank you. So I've been a little bit busy over the last couple of weeks. So we've had Pascoe Vale in the Park, which is a fantastic day put on by the Neighbourhood House. Glenroy Festival, which was fantastic, coming back in-house for the first time in I think it was 3 years, which is really great. It was just a really great atmosphere, and I think we can only build on it from this point going forward. I went to a moving service with Pascoe Vale RSL with Councillor Kavanagh and Councillor Riley. In my role, On the MEFL board, we've had our planning day, so there's a lot of things going on in that space, and MEFL's really, moving in such a positive direction. It's really fantastic to be affiliated with council and the direction that they're going in. I also joined Councillor Farnley and members of the economic development team at a CEDA breakfast, learning how council can be more innovative in its role, and that was some really great learnings coming out of that. Also as well for residents, my monthly meeting times are all online now. They're all on my Facebook page, so they're there for the rest of the year. So if you're in the Northwest Ward, please, I do encourage you to come along and chat with me a little bit more. And lastly, I've just been informed, and I'd love to announce that I can officially advise that Moreland City Council has purchased the land at 1 Hopeton Avenue, which is a huge win for the community. It means a lot to me because it was actually my very first motion on council to protect that land. And by council taking such a strong stance and the commitment to the community, we've allowed the fast track sell-off from Melbourne Water to be stopped and for council to purchase this land. So I think it's a fantastic win for the council, for the community, for the residents of Brunswick West, and I hope that we can all enjoy that park for many, many more years to come.
Yes. Councillor Kavanagh.
I'll just bring up to council's attention tonight one event, and well, actually two events. Last Saturday was International Midwifes Day, and this Friday is International Nurses Day. And so because they are things that council are involved in, maternal and child health services, it's an opportunity just to congratulate our staff in that area. Jennifer mentioned before about acknowledging staff in different times, and it's true. They perform many roles in the community and a passionate commitment to supporting community wellbeing. The primary focus of our nursing teams is to assist people to achieve best outcomes for children's health and the health of their families. And so I'm sure other councillors will join with me in thanking our staff in those areas and wishing midwives a happy day for last Saturday and other nurses a happy day for this Friday.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. So I too attended to our Anzac Day ceremonies, and they were wonderful to see. Such a huge turnout, as Councillor Yildiz had mentioned at Glenroy. People attended in the rain, and it was quite an emotional thing to see. The big win for Moreland and for particularly the Northwest Ward councillors is the Oak Park Pool redevelopment, and I'd like to stress this again, that this is something that's been entirely funded by council. We haven't had any help from the state government or the federal government to pour some money into this. We've done this all ourselves, and again, I commend the wonderful budgeting and stewardship of our CEO, Narina De Lorenzo, for this. It's going to be a wonderful facility. The Hopeton Avenue, as Dale mentioned, is a huge win for council as well. It's something that was public land and had been sold off to developers to use and get the most value out of. And if it wasn't for the huge community input and the advocacy of council, it would have gone. So congratulations to all councils, in particular Councillor Martin, for bringing this to the forefront and really fighting hard to keep this land, public land, which it should always have been. So that's it from me, but I'll hand over to Deputy Mayor Samantha Ratton.
I'd like to make a couple of notes. The first one is to congratulate the Brunswick Baptist Church on their 155th anniversary, which was celebrated on the weekend. It was a fantastic celebration, and that church community has seen incredible change in the community, and they've adapted with that change. It's a beautifully warm, welcoming and inviting congregation and community, and you could see that in the diversity of the congregation. They've had a really strong ethos of welcoming people who are seeking asylum and refuge, new migrants to Australia, to the Brunswick community, and they're a core part of that congregation and that community. So I want to thank them for all the work they do, the outreach work they do, for providing a place of sanctuary and hope for so many people, and congratulate them on 155 years. And secondly, to note that it's Volunteer Week this week, and I just want to thank all the hundreds and thousands of volunteers, particularly in Moreland, and particularly those who help in the community work that Council is a part of, and all our partner organisations. We can't do this work without you, and I want to thank you for your tireless commitment, passion and energy, and we look forward to working with you in the future.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Franny?
Thank you. I just want to, speaking of Anzac Day, I was at the Fawkner RSL representing council there, and I just want to thank Harry and Alan for welcoming there, and also acknowledge federal member for Wells, Peter Keller, who was also in attendance at that ceremony. Look, usually Councillor Kavanagh is the one that talks about family history, but I was really proud to wear my grandfather's war medals. He served for the British Army in the Cyprus Regiment, was part of the Italian beach landing, was a prisoner of war for a year. So he's got super proud of my grandfather and his service. I also was cycling down the upfield bike path. Councillor Riley and I love cycling in Moreland, and I ran into former Councillor Lenka Thompson. It was great to see her out and about with the upfield urban forest team. She's still very active in the community. And finally, wasn't it great to see the Mighty Blues beat the Pies over the weekend? Wasn't it great? How good was the coaching from Brendan Bolton? Absolutely shut out the Pies. And I was super pumped. Stephen Savani doing a great job with lists. Blues 2020, put your money on it. Premiership on the way.
I'm with you.
Thank you, Councillor Pan. Councillor Carly Hannon.
Okay, well, with my fellow councillors, we met with the Fawkner Community House, and just like to note that Danielle is here this evening as well. So we met with Meredith and Daniela and a number of the other volunteers there as well. So for Volunteer Week, would love to commend all the work that Fawkner Community House do. I also, last couple of weeks, have been volunteering with the Hippie program there, which is a parent support program. And, it's been really great to see some of the work that goes into that, and also how much the community and the families appreciate that program. I also went to the Vicky Cleary tribute with Coburg Lions, which Councillor Natalie Aboud also attended with her sons. I'm sure she'll mention that. And that was a really incredible event that Phil Cleary spoke so well, and it also had the Victim Survivor Council, who are working with the state government, and to have that follow with the state government budget for all the money into domestic violence is such an incredible thing to see as well, and something that the community is really going to appreciate. Finally, I also went to the Coburg Lions feeder team's first home game on the weekend. Unfortunately, they didn't win, but they had a great kick out there, and it was great to see the community out for that one too. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bolton.
Yes, I wanted to mention something which is, I think, a bit of a victory, while we're not the whole way yet. Council's actually organising an event at the Cook Oval in Glenroy, and also at the site of the former Ballot Maroop Aboriginal School, which was shamefully closed down by a previous state government. There's been a long fight to try and save this land from just being flogged off for housing and development. And, the community really lost a lot when the school was closed down. So basically what's happened is the state government, after a lot of massive community pressure from a very underprivileged community, the Aboriginal community, has signed a lease with Moreland Council, and Moreland Council has signed a lease with the Wurundjeri. I believe it's for 30 months, which should enable a feasibility study to be done into developing a First Nations community hub on the land. So there's a Wurundjeri Traditional Games Day being held on the site. The details are on the council website on the 3rd of June. But I actually think this is a victory, even though we lost that early battle to save the school. And there is something else which relates to Moreland's history.
Councillor Bolton, I'm just conscious of the time.
That's right, I'll just mention this very quickly. There is an event which local community group is organising, which is another aspect of our history in terms of the First World War, this is the 100th anniversary of the second anniversary of the second anti-conscription referendum, and there's going to be a sort of conference seminar, all-day seminar on the 20th of May. People can
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Aboud?
Yes, I was also going to mention the Wurundjeri Traditional Games Day. So if you haven't come across Uncle Bill Nicholson and his sister Mandy and their troupe of dancers and everything else get into that. It's running from 10 until 1 and you can book on the website, on council website. The other thing I wanted to mention around that space is to do with some treaty dialogue that's been happening. So there's been a few conversations about what the conversations will be about. So there's a big convergence happening at the end of May with a whole lot of clans from across the country, and I'm looking forward to them being ready to engage in the conversations that council's already pledged to have. So I guess a shout out to all of those people. As soon as you're ready, we're still waiting here to have that conversation, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what we can do with that. With regard to the budget, we've heard that there's a 12-month stay on funding for 4-year-old kinder. So a 12-month stay means get complacent, stop campaigning, and you'll lose your money next year. So I just want to stress that it's time to not get complacent and stop campaigning, because we'll just lose the money next year, and 4-year-old kinder is really important. I know that there's been a really solid campaign from this community about that stuff. There's also a little art exhibition which is happening down at 75 Harding Street called Las Amigas. So they've got stuff on Facebook, but just some local female artists. So as the councillor, which I share responsibility for status of women, I'm looking forward to opening that on for those people. 29th of May is when the consultation for the urban forest strategy closes, so quickly get into that.
Councillor Bood, conscious of the time again.
Oh, sorry. And yeah, that'll do.
Thank you, Councillor Bood. Okay, we'll now move on to the presentation of officer reports, and I think there are some items that we can move on block, and these are items that are purely for noting or that have been considered by council in the past, or they're purely administrative in nature. So councillors, I will go through those items, and please let me know if you want any of these removed from the on block list. So City Development Activity Report for the March quarter, that's DD 3317.
I wouldn't mind speaking to that.
Okay, I'll cross that off. Yep. Council Action Plan 2016-2017 Performance Report for the third quarter. We'll leave that on. The Audit and Risk Management Committee. That's okay. The council meeting dates for 2017. The Assembly of Council's record. The Financial Management Report for the period ending the 31st of March.
Just wouldn't mind speaking on that briefly,
Okay,
if
yep,
possible.
I'll take that off. And the Moreland Graffiti Strategy.
Oh, actually, I think you should take that.
Yep, are you going to speak to that?
Well, yeah, I will.
Okay, yep, I'll take that up. Okay, so in that case, I'll just list the ones that we're going to move on block, just for clarity. The Council Action Plan 2016-2017 Performance Report for the third quarter, the Audit and Risk Management Committee Report, the Council meeting dates for 2017, and the Assembly of Councillors record. So is there a mover for those reports? Councillor Ratnam, and second by Councillor Carly Hannan. All those in favour? I declare that carried. So the next report we have to consider is Councillor Kavanagh is on his feet for the City Development Activity Report.
Could I move that the officer recommendation on page 19? If I have a seconder, I'll briefly speak to it.
Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Kavanagh.
Yeah, I just wanted to say a couple of things to this report, and particularly to congratulate the area on what I find are wonderful reports every 3 months. A couple of points I want to point out. On page 30, it mentions of the planning applications that have been appealed and it goes right back to 2013 to 2017. The point I'd like to make is that 95% of council's decisions are not appealed. 95% of council's decisions are not appealed by either the objector or the applicant for the conditions. Now, then when they are appealed and they go to VCAT, we're winning over 60% of those that are put before VCAT. So therefore, if you like, 97% of council's decisions remain as they were made by council. So often people will say, oh, you don't bother objecting because it all get up at VCAT. In fact, that's not the case. Yes, sometimes we're disappointed with VCAT's decisions, but 97% of council's decisions in the last 5 years have stood. And so this process, the local process is a really important one, and it shouldn't be underestimated. Personally, for me, the real concern is ministerial approval, and we've seen the ramifications of that just north to us at Pentridge, when community had no say whatsoever, and by the stroke of the pen, by the Minister of Planning, we get the outcomes that we get at Pentridge. But in fact, on the better point of view, most of council's decisions are being accepted, and when they are being appealed, we're winning many of them as well.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Ratner?
Briefly, I'd like to concur with Councillor Kavanagh's sentiments and just note the breadth of work that's undertaken in this space. It's one of the core aspects of council work. And just in addition to Councillor Kavanagh, just wanted to note that I was really pleased to look at the VCAT win-loss ratio with the decisions made by Urban Planning Committee now for the second quarter in a row, for the second year in a row so far, looking like that we're winning more than losing at VCAT for UPC decisions. Some of that's there's a bit of a lag often, so these are probably decisions of the last Urban Planning Committee, so some pressure on this Urban Planning Committee to keep up that record of more wins than losses. But it's really interesting to note in the detail in the report, it actually identifies each of those decisions and what VCAT approved or rejected as part of the recommendations. And it's interesting that at some points VCAT might not approve the full decision by the UPC, but some of the amendments that the UPC has made to improve the outcome of that development, even if it seems small at the time, can be really significant. For example, there was one building where the UPC recommended, while there was an approval, it said it wanted changes to the internal layout and to make sure there was more light coming into the new dwellings, and VCAT approved that. So there are small things that might seem small things on the table of the Urban Planning Committee, but they can make incredible difference, and VCAT heeds that when we make those recommendations. So I just wanted to note that.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Is there any further discussion from council? No, in that case, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Councillor Boot?
I just wondered if there's any chance, I know there's quite a few people waiting for the DSD 1317, the Moreland Food System Strategy, and I wonder if we could bring that forward.
Yes. In that case, perhaps we should check with the gallery if there's any particular reports they want brought forward, just because our meetings can go quite late into the evening.
The toilets one?
The notice of motion, was that the one? Yeah. Okay.
And Metzing Park as well, is that possible?
So, that will be asked. I believe Councillor Tapnos may be asking Councillor to accept an urgent business item. Yep.
So just through the Mayor, what you'd need to do is bring forward urgent business. There's currently no urgent business, and then the Councillor Tapanos would need to request and move that council considers this item as urgent business. So that's how you would do it. You'd bring urgent business forward.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Marina.
I support the food systems being forward.
Yeah. Okay. I think I might have missed one. Yeah, Mark, you can.
Nolby 2117. It's the zoning and planning request we needed next.
And one more on the social inclusion project in Faulkner.
That's the other non. Okay. Well, perhaps we'll start with the food system strategy. Councillor Abood.
Yes, I would like to make an amendment to the recommendation.
Yep.
I'll just find it. So, I think, Olivia, have you got a copy of it there? Yeah, okay. So,
It's not functioning. It's not.
yeah, and yes. So to keep point one, which is to adopt the Moreland Food System Strategy, to add point 2, which is to note a proposed budget allocation, change point 2 to read, to support a budget allocation of 120,000 for 2017-18 and 100,000 in each of the following 2 years to support implementation of the strategy, and then to add a point 3 which says to request a council report outlining progress made with implementing the first year of the strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Bood.
And if I have a second, I'll speak.
Yes. Councillor Bolton. Councillor Bood?
So I just think it's worth noting that there was more than one person who was ready to second this. And what I could do talking to this particular item is reel off a great big long list of people since 2014 who have been involved in, you know, putting this whole thing together. This is not my work. This was all out there, and it's IP that's all across many different cities in Metro Melbourne, which is awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to quote some words from a beautiful girl who sent an email to me that I thought, I wish I wrote that. I would like to recognise that we came to this task with a common goal to build a sustainable, just and vibrant food system. We are definitely well on our way to achieving that goal in Moreland, and thank everyone for their hard work, collaboration and willingness to share expertise, because I think that just sums it up beautifully. And I want to also note that this is not the end of this work in this city. This is the beginning of this work in the city, and there's a whole lot of stuff that I plan to keep doing, including working with the tree guys to find out what we can do in that space, creating public orchards, but also a whole lot of different stuff, ways that we can create scenarios where people can connect back to their food. So it's different stuff, like getting a whole bunch of young people to attend the school gardens while the schools are closed over summer. So I put in an application for MacArthur Foundation grant to do some exploring about what opportunities there are for some of these programs to be developed. But I just really want to stress that this is not about building community gardens. It's just about a whole lot more than that, and this is building community gardens is the first part, but I'm really excited about what can potentially grow out of this space. I'm looking forward to that happening. And I just can't stress enough that this is not my work. All I did was come in, see it all laying there and scoop it up and put it forward, and I'm really excited that I expect that this will be supported unanimously by the council, and if it isn't, then I'm interested to know who didn't grow up with gardens in the backyard.
Thank you, Councillor Bood. Councillor Bolton?
Yes, I would like to speak. I actually think there will be a lot of community support for this policy, especially if it gets voted up. And I certainly look forward to, as it starts to get implemented, that it actually starts to get fleshed out a lot more specific, concrete sort of projects, so less generalities. And I think it's far improved on the last time that this came to council. So I think it is, really good work that people have done, and I look forward to the work being deepened.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Is there any further discussion from councillors? Councillor Rath.
Just wanted to state quickly a vote of thanks to Councillor Bood for the energy and the enthusiasm that you put into this to see it come to fruition. It's a really fantastic product, and I particularly mentioned the Moreland Food Garden Network, all the representatives for their patience and their perseverance and really hard work in driving this from the community perspective. And one of the big reasons it's here on our table tonight is because of all of your dedication. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. If there's no further discussion, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. And I will ask that for the record that it be noted that it was carried unanimously. Okay. Now, the next item we'll move on to will be the notice of motion on page 326. Councillor Bolton, that's the public toilets accessing COVID.
Yes. So the motion is, council notes that access to public toilets is a basic human right and that lack of access to public toilets can lead to social isolation. A comparison of car park spaces in mall and shopping centres compared to the number of public toilet cubicles, urinals available indicates that the Coburg Shopping Centre has the least adequate number of public toilet cubicles. Therefore, council resolves to 1, immediately open the Coburg Library meeting room toilets to public access. 2, reopen and refurbish the underground public toilets at the back of Coles. 3, refurbish and extend the toilets within the main Coburg Library meeting room. And 4, replace the XLU automatic toilets with a new public toilet block for the Coburg Shopping Centre in the 5-year public toilet plan.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Is there a seconder? Councillor Carly Hannon. Councillor Bolton.
I'd like to make an amendment to this.
Yes, did you want to propose?
So do I do that now?
Yeah, you can propose that
okay.
now.
Sorry, let me just find the words. Okay. So I'd like to amend point 1 to read, immediately open the Coburg Library meeting room toilets to public access during library open hours, with access via the main library door and not via the door straight off the mall.
Can you slow down?
Yep. Yep. Do you want me to send it to you? Yep. This. So immediately open the Coburg Library meeting room toilets to public access during library open hours with access via the main library and not via the door straight off the mall. And 2, assess other actions after the report on research undertaken into the community views on the use of the unisex toilet facilities is considered by council at the June 2017 council meeting.
What's the second one again?
So just to look at the rest, where all the money is, after the 2017 council, after the June 2017 council meeting, which is when we get the report back.
Thank you, Councillor Boot. Councillor Bolton, is that acceptable to you?
Not all of it, no.
Okay, so Councillor Abood, is there a seconder to second Councillor Abood's motion? Councillor Riley.
I haven't had a chance to speak to the motion first.
Sorry, I'll just... It should return.
There's a proposed amendment to the motion.
There's 2 motions now.
Yeah, that's right. You have to consider one at a time.
So we'll consider one at a time, and because Councillor Abood has proposed hers and it's been seconded, that can be considered, and then we'll return to yours.
But my motion was first and it was seconded first.
That's right, and then Councillor Abood proposed an
Bring on the
alternative.
full shadow motion. Bids first.
Yeah. So just through the mayor. So the amendment is to the motion. So if you talk about the motion with an amendment that's been proposed, you're then starting the discussion around a motion which may subsequently change. So you would hear your amendments first. If the amendments don't get up, then you have the motion and you can debate against those amendments and talk about some parts of your motion as to why that shouldn't change anyway. So you have the capacity to engage in that debate and talk about the virtues of not accepting those amendments.
Just maybe one clarification about meeting procedure. Normally, the mover of the motion normally speaks first before the amendments are put forward. The reason I didn't do that on this occasion is because I hadn't heard the amendment that Councillor Wood had put forward, and I thought it might have been acceptable, and only part of it is acceptable, because normally that is normally the course of action is the mover of the motion speaks first before amendments are allowed.
Just through the chair.
So
my view is
we're
that that's
consulting
correct,
the local,
but she's
the
missed
meeting
out.
procedure local law. We're just consulting that to clarify that. Otherwise, the issue is just that you do have a motion that is proposed to be changed. So that's the key reason why we're recommending it. That way, we'll consult the local law to clarify that if you'd like.
Can I ask a question? Can I ask a
Councillor
question?
Kavanagh?
What if we allowed Councillor Bolton to speak but can't make any reference to the proposed amendment?
That would be, I mean, the chair has the power to...
I do think Councillor Bolton is should be allowed to speak to her motion before. I do.
It's just my motion.
So it would be for the chair, and the chair can allow you to do that.
Okay, well, I'm prepared to do it in that order because we have done that in the past that way, where you can speak to that, and then following you speaking to it, and Councillor Carly Hannon, if she wishes to add anything to it, then we would turn to Councillor Abood. I know this is a bit out of order.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm happy.
Yeah, okay. Councillor Bolton.
Yes, so I'm. This is an issue which has been going on for some years in Coburg, and it is an important, I believe, human rights issue, and it's also an important issue in terms of the rights of people with disabilities, not only the rights of people with small children and just general human rights, having access to public toilets. And it's, you know, some of the work that some of the residents have done to actually investigate and try and provide some facts to council. So certainly one piece of evidence which has been distributed to all councillors indicates that one comparison, it's not the only comparison, of the number of car park spaces in Coburg compared to the number of public toilet cubicles in Coburg compared to other shopping centres indicates that Coburg is the worst served of all of the shopping centres in Moreland. Then we've got the issue of the survey that was referred to in question time earlier about the number of people using the Coburg toilets. There's only one cubicle for men, one for women. We're very different to the Brunswick Library, which is a public access public toilets where people can walk in off the street and use those public toilets, and there's a number of cubicles for both genders. It's also in previous council reports, it's often been reported that there's no evidence of queuing outside the public toilets in the main around the Coburg Mall, but the experience of people using XL loos is people walk past one, see that it's occupied because there's only one cubicle, people walk to the next cubicle or the next XL loo, which is across the street. If that's occupied, then they go to the library. That's generally the pattern. So people do queue, but not everyone who needs to go to the loo queues when they're occupied. People cruise past or wait nearby, and so they wouldn't to see when the light goes on to be green. So, I mean, I think it is an issue, and this is recognised by a lot of disability groups. That's why there is now a public toilet map, which has been developed, and some people would know quite a famous comedian and disability activist, Stella Young, who's passed away now, who was basically indicated in one of her articles that I discovered that this is one of the biggest issues affecting people with disability. Quite recently,
Councillor Bolton, your time is running out.
Quite recently in Coburg, we had the case of a woman,
Okay,
I think in a wheelchair, who had to relieve herself in an arcade because she couldn't get access to a public toilet.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Now I will remind councillors of the strict time frame that we have, and I know that this is a topic that requires a bit of debate, but Councillor Bolton, your time was up at 3 minutes. So we'll move on to Councillor Carly Hannon. Do you wish to say anything?
So this is without talking about the amendment.
That's correct. It's you second Councillor Bolton's
Unless you want to wait till later.
Yeah, I'll talk later.
Sure. Councillor Abood.
So we don't vote on the... Or you asked me to talk to the amendment?
Yes, to your amendment, because Councillor Bolton's already proposed hers, then you propose yours, and so now we're speaking to yours.
Okay,
yes.
Sorry. Okay, so I completely agree with everything that Councillor Bolton just said. That's why I met with the group who have been heading up this campaign to get the toilet situation fixed. But I think that I heard Corinna say, open the library meeting room toilets or refurbish and reopen the underground public toilets at the back of Coles, or... I heard you say or, so let me just talk to that.
No, sorry, there's going to be no discussion from the gallery on this. Please, Councillor Abood is on her feet.
I think that the proposal to build a toilet block, refurbish a toilet block and refurbish the XLUs and open the toilet meeting rooms is something that financially is unrealistic to get support. I don't think it will get support. So the reason that I've put up the amendment is because I think the amendment might get support, and you'll end up with a toilet in Coburg which you can access, and so will the rest of the community. And this is what I consider to be a way forward for the people who've been fighting for this toilet for quite some time. So this is not about me not supporting the toilet, which I would be forced to do with such a big proposal, which is going to take such a lot of money that we're trying to organise our budget at the moment, and this is asking for over $500,000 from the budget to do this work, and I don't think it's realistic. So I think this is a way forward, and that this might result in the toilets being open. The reason I included the bit about not using the library, the door straight off the mall, is because we've identified that in the past we've had problems in that area without it being police, whereas if people can walk straight through the library, then probably they'll be on several cameras, but also people in the centre of the library will know who's come in and out and what's going on.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Now, is Councillor Riley, do you wish to speak?
Yes, look, I was hoping that we would actually discuss this at next month's meeting, and we were really hoping to have the report this evening. I know that's not satisfactory to everybody. However, I am supporting Councillor Abood's motion, amendment, and I'm a bit concerned about making decisions on the run, which may have impacts on the staff in the library, etc. So with that reservation, I'm speaking, and I'm sure there will be reports coming back from officers as to how this opening may impact and what implications might come of that. And that doesn't preclude us from actually, receiving feedback and seeing how that works or not in the meantime. So I think it's trying to address some of the immediate concerns people have. We are listening to you. We're concerned that you've taken that long. I'm very appreciative of all the data gathering that you've done, and we look forward to actually giving this much more full and proper consideration when the report comes next month. So, yes, I commend the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Is there any further discussion, Councillor Carly-Hannon?
Thank you. I'd like to begin by thanking Sean and Karina for coming this evening. I will be supporting the amendment, and if that doesn't get up, I will support the motion. I suppose I definitely consider that the immediate action needs to be that we open the access to the meeting room toilets. My view is that we should be able to also open it from the mall. However, I am happy to wait until the June report, because I do realise that many people have raised concerns around the safety and history of that mall access. The only reason that I'm concerned about Councillor Bolton's motion is that the underground public toilets reopening and refurbishing, I'm not sure whether that's going to work, particularly because they do involve stairs, and so therefore I am concerned about the overall accessibility to those toilets, whereas I would much rather see brand new, nice, accessible toilets that will be instead of the Exeloos, and I think that we should be phasing out Exeloos across the municipality. So that's my position, and that's why I will support the amendment, or otherwise the motion. Thank you.
I believe Councillor Kavanagh.
Yep. I'm also supportive of the amendment, and I'll also flag that at no time will I be supporting the opening of the Coles underground toilets. I'm probably the only councillor around here that used those for many years with my mum's shopping, etc. And we would not be supportive of that, and I do believe they'd probably be illegal if we do open them, because we wouldn't be filling disability access. The one thing I'm standing up mainly for, I would like a bit of work to be done also on making sure that we approach the Owners Corporation of Walker's Arcade about the possibility of reopening those toilets at Walker's Arcade. Even if I'd be amenable to even having council put some sort of, if we were to take over the maintenance of those, etc. I do think that needs to be explored. For many years they were well-used toilets, and they've been closed for a number of years by the Owners Corporation, and I think that maybe with a bit of encouragement we could probably get those open as well.
Can I just double check if Councillor Kavanagh is asking me to add that to my amendment, because I would be happy to.
Is that
I'd be happy to add that to my amendment.
To explore with the Owners Corporation of Walker's
I think it's
Arcade
a
the
great
possibility
idea.
of reopening those.
Yep. Councillor Riley? Yes, you're agreeable to that as well? Okay. We'll just wait for that to go up on the screen. Councillor Bolton?
I'd like to speak against the amendment, although I probably actually support part of it, not all of it. Really, all my motion was calling for is immediately open the Coburg Library meeting room. I also believe that we should allow public access off the street. We allow public access off the street into the XLUs. Antisocial activity could happen in the XLUs, and we allow access off the street. So I don't see why, the idea of public toilets is people need to be able to see where to go into them. Some people probably don't go into the library because they might feel that they have to be borrowing a book in order to access those toilets. So I actually think they need to be signposted and people be able to go into the library meeting room toilets. I suspect it's probably okay to not have them open when the library is not open, but I sort of need to think about that a bit. But I really do feel that we need to take some serious action, because I think a lot of residents don't trust the council to act on this, because for a number of years, council has basically denied that there's been a problem with access to public toilets in Coburg. And so 3 other issues have been raised. Obviously, they need to be investigated. The only part of my motion was immediate, was the Coburg Library meeting room. Obviously, the others have to be investigated in the light of a 5-year public toilet plan. It is true the underground toilets at the back of Coles aren't disability friendly, but given that there are XLUs which are, and the meeting room toilets which are disability friendly, then reopening existing toilets would mean you expand the number of toilets. You just have to signpost that they're not disability accessible. So I just think we need to take some action, because residents have gone to great trouble to actually prove the lack of facilities within the centre of Coburg.
Can I close the...
On the amendment, no.
No.
Okay.
Because, you won't be able to close the debate. Is there any other speakers?
Yeah, I'm going to speak briefly. I'm also supportive of the amendment. There is no doubt we need to increase the amount of facilities that are available in central Coburg. I mean, having a look at the survey results that have been done, and well done to the residents who did that, because it is very informative, and the numbers are substantial. So there's no doubt we need to do something. But for me, we can take this immediate step now and assess it, but we really do need to consider through our budgetary processes, and perhaps through the process of a report in the future, how do we actually create more public toilets in central Coburg? It has been an issue that we've discussed for years and years and years, and yet we haven't actually seen a bit of a strategy around how can we further increase the amount of availability of toilet facilities. I'm with Councillor Cavaday in regards to the undergrounding public toilets. They're not DDA compliant, and they shouldn't be reopened. I'm not sure exactly what is prepared, apart from a brief sketch that we got today from the resident about Coburg Library meeting room refurbishment, and that might be something we should get a council report on into the future to see whether there is space and the cost of actually creating more facilities there. But I think that if we look at it from a strategic perspective, we would find many other options, including convincing traders to actually open up their facilities for public access as well. So I do think we need to look at the specific issue of central Coburg, perhaps outside of our strategy, and have a look at how we can increase facilities there. And there's many solutions. So I think just saying we're going to reopen this and refurbish this tonight is probably not the right way to go, but certainly we should investigate a broader strategy about it, and we need to get on with this, because residents have been talking to us about it for years.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Is there any further discussion from councillors? If not, I'll put Councillor Aboud's alternate motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. So councillors will now return to Councillor Bolton's substantive motion, and if there isn't any further debate on that, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour?
As amended. Wasn't that really a motion in itself rather than an amendment? It's really like an alternative motion.
No, that was an amendment.
Moved as an amendment.
It wasn't a foreshadowed motion. So We'll return to Councillor Bolton's amendment.
Hardly anything
Yeah.
the original
Yeah.
motion.
Original motion.
So just through the Mayor, so the amendment is now incorporated into the substantive motion.
Yes.
So if we just allow a minute, the note taking will happen, and so it will appear on the screen so you know exactly what you're voting on. So now the substantive motion has changed. So, and it incorporates part of the original motion as well as some of the things that have been altered by resolution. So just give us 1 second, and we'll update it, and then you can vote on that.
That's right. Yes, that's right. Yes.
Because the first one said she amended point 2 and 3.
That's right.
Instead of point 2 3, she said only point 2 3. The substantive is now the amended.
This is the one we voted on now.
So we vote again.
Yeah. So just for clarity's sake, Councillor Aboud's motion has been incorporated into the substantive motion. So that's what we're voting on, the whole thing now. So we voted to...
Just a clarification, my impression was that the amendment was deleting point 2, 3 and 4.
Correct.
That's right. It's replacing points 2 and 3 and 4 with points 2 and 3.
So, I don't know that that's quite what it said. That's what we're struggling with, because it makes reference to later points that you do them after the assessment happens. That seems to be what I read in Councillor Aboud's original motion.
Replacing them, so I'm not sure we can get the clarity.
Yeah, so the original motion, immediately open Coburg Library meeting room toilets, that's all straightforward.
Yeah.
So that replaces the point 1, and point 2, assess other actions. Now, it makes reference to the other actions in Councillor Bolton's original item.
That's
Doesn't replace them, makes reference to them, so you can't delete them. Assess other actions after the report on research undertaken. So that would mean a new point 2, which is Councillor Aboud's point 2, and you would leave the rest, and you wouldn't do those until point 2 is done. That's actually how you've crafted the motion, the amendment.
Yeah.
Now, if you wanted to replace them, you'd have to say, replace these points with...
I'm not trying to replace them, I'm trying to assess them after we get the report back.
Right, therefore they would remain, and you would have a new point 2, which is Councillor Aboud's point 2, and Councillor Kavanagh's addition would be at the very end. We would put that at the end, which is to explore the owners' corporation.
Other actions such as...
Can we just seek some clarity? Councillor Aboud, my understanding was that we were replacing points 2, 3 and 4 with your points 2 and 3. Was that not the intention of your amendment?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so did you mention that, sorry, didn't interrupt you, your intention of your motion was to replace point 2, 3 and 4 with your new points 2 and 3.
Yes.
But we failed to acknowledge that at the start. Okay, so if that was the intention, well, that was a different intention.
Okay.
So proposed
words aren't there.
Can I move an amendment?
Solution?
I'll move an amendment to delete points
That's it.
3, 4 and the new point 5.
Well, I guess my suggestion was going to be that you just do it again and say what those words are supposed to say, which is replace these, because that's not what it says. That's actually what was put to you. So I would suggest that you can alter that wording and just make it really clear you're replacing those points, and then we just do the vote again, make sure we're very clear, and then that'll be the motion.
I'm really sorry, Olivia.
That's all right. No worries at all.
So, it would read, immediately open the Coburg Library meeting room toilets to public access during library open hours, with access via the main library and not via the door straight off the mall. Point 2.
Replace.
Replace points 2, 3 and 4 with new points 2 and 3. Then the new point 2 would say, assess other actions. And I'm actually happy to leave the other actions open because I think we know what we're talking about. After the report on research undertaken into the community views on the use of unisex toilet facilities is to be considered by Council at the June 2017 Council meeting. And then the alternative point 3, to explore with the Owners Corporation of the option of opening up the toilets in Walker's Arcade.
Okay.
Could I suggest that replace points 2 and 3 and 4 of Councillor Bolton's original motion be added there, just for clarity's sake?
Okay. Yep, that clarifies it more.
No.
So you don't need to vote on this again.
And in point 3, you need to say to explore with the owners corporation the opening up of toilets rather than of opening.
Yeah, or the option of.
Okay. All right. So, councillors, do you wish to vote on this again, or is this quite clear?
Vote on it.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. We'll vote on this again. So we're voting on Councillor Aboud's amendment. So all those in favour to the amendment?
Motion. That's an
No,
amendment.
the amendment first.
The amendment first.
It's the amendment first. It's another amendment. Yeah. All those against? I declare that carried. So now we'll return to the substantive motion. And if there's no further debate on that, because it's, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, we'll all vote on that. So, councillors, all those in favour of the substantive motion?
Hang on, is this?
As amended.
As amended, that's right,
Sorry.
yep. Okay, I declare that carried. All right. Thank you, councillors. That got quite confusing, and thank you to the gallery for your patience. It can be quite confusing with procedural technicalities. So we'll now move on to the next notice of motion, which is the zoning and planning. Councillor Ratnam, yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to move notice of motion 2117, and I'll just read out the first 4 points, but I'll take the rest as read because there's quite a bit of detail, and I'll speak to why that is. So the first 4 points are to note that Council has submitted that it has submitted several zoning changes as part of Amendment C159 that request some streets that have been zoned residential growth zone to be rezoned to the neighbourhood residential zone, particularly in Brunswick West. To ask the Minister to immediately provide interim controls to those specific areas named in C159 for rezoning from residential growth zone to neighbourhood residential zone by giving them interim status as neighbourhood residential zone. B, request an interim immediate control of a maximum allowable height of 4 stories for the residential growth zone, as anything more will see the area become an activity centre as opposed to a residential zone. 3, ask the Minister to consider better controls for areas that interface between the neighbourhood residential zone and general residential zone with greater setbacks and height restrictions. And 4, that Council begins a staged process to conduct a strategic review and planning scheme amendment to review residential areas of Moreland that should be rezoned to a more suitable zone. And the following points are a list of the things that this strategic review and planning scheme amendment should take into account. So I won't read them all, but I'll take those as read, and if I have a seconder, I'm happy to speak to that.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
We have spoken a lot in this chamber, both the previous council and this council, about the application of residential zones across Moreland. In 2013-14, under the previous state government, we were required, all councils across Victoria were required to apply 3 new residential zones to what was one existing residential zone. This, in essence, had the impact of increasing density in areas that had otherwise been very intact residential zones. Some areas were transitioning, but essentially we were told by the state government then that if we did not rezone the city into these 3 new zones, the general residential zone would be applied to the whole city. And we had a sense of what they were looking for in those zones. As a result, we put a package to the Minister that essentially kept about 66% of the city in the neighbourhood residential zone, the lowest density zone, but earmarked then about 30% into the general residential zone and the handful of percentage into the residential growth zone, which are neighbourhood centres. Through that process, and then there was a change of government, I understood that there was indication that the new government was going to review the residential zones. They've announced some changes to the residential zones, but to the actual criteria within each zone. What we had hoped for was that there would be a process by which councils could make submissions to the Minister about areas that had been incorrectly zoned. And if you think about the context that the councils made this decision in last time, they were told essentially that they wanted more, the state government wanted more growth, and if you didn't put enough general residential and residential growth zone, essentially your package wouldn't succeed. And that's exactly what happened to Moreland. Our package was not approved by the previous state government, and my understanding was that it didn't have enough growth in it, but we stuck to our position. With the change of government, it was approved. There was some weakening of some of the residential neighbourhood residential zone sort of controls, which we were unhappy about, but we were hoping the state government would actually announce a review of the zones that would allow us to propose areas that had been incorrectly zoned, and in the context where there was pressure to increase growth in some areas that even we were not comfortable doing, but we had to put a package that was somehow going to prevent us from the whole area becoming general residential zone. So it was a particular context, and we're disappointed that it hasn't been announced yet. So what this proposal seeks to do is to get some immediate controls on a number of areas where there's been significant community advocacy around zoning from residential growth zone to either general residential or neighbourhood residential zone. But it also starts the internal work where we start looking at the zones, the application of zones. We've had a number of submissions already from the community over the last couple of years about areas that should be in a more appropriate zone. And this piece of work begins that work. And hopefully, with the successful completion of that package, we'll have a much more appropriate rezoning of a number of areas that are causing concern across the city. And just in regard to Mark's comment about the car stackers, one of the reasons I haven't included that is this is really focused on the zones. We do have an opportunity with the report coming in June to advance the advocacy in that space. So it was not that it was discounted and not important, but I think it's better placed to keep the zoning and the car stackers at this stage. With C1, 5 and 10 both in place, but I think it's better if we separate them.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Riley? No, sorry, Councillor Martin?
Again, I completely second everything Councillor Ratnam has said. This issue is hugely important to the residents that have been affected by this. It's something that a lot of people are caught up in these zoning, and what we need is the Minister to immediately look at these zones and change them. And it's pretty straightforward. So I won't take up much more time, but I really do think that this motion is really what we need, and I really ask that the Minister looks at this and really listens to the residents that are impacted by these changes.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Is there Councillor Tapinas?
Yeah, I'm fairly supportive of this motion. Particularly, I think those areas which we know, and we've moved motions forward before, and they are certain parts of Union Street, Burnell Street, and I think there might have been one or two others that do need to go from what is called the growth zone to a general zone, or from a general zone to a neighbourhood zone. Apart from those, I hope that they will be dealt with. I'm fairly supportive of all of the resolutions, but I did want to caution that we are opening up a fairly large process where we are reviewing all of the residential zones. And if you really have a look at the whole map and the plan, I have to say that we got a very good deal, a deal that sort of saw a large chunk of the city protected. So I would just also caution that potentially we are opening the door for some of that to be reviewed and also changed, because there are many developers out there and many, even mums and dads who want to develop their properties, that will take this opportunity now to actually argue that their land should actually go from a restricted zone to a less restricted zone. So I just thought that might be an unintended consequence of what might occur if we open up for a review. But nonetheless, I think at least internally, we can undertake that process, consult with the community, and then I look forward to another resolution coming before council about starting the process, so we know exactly at that stage what it is that might come, what might be the final outcome of such a review. So at this stage, I have to support this process, but I do so cautiously, because the end outcome may actually not be what we want to see, with the exception of those 2 or 3 areas that we think should be changed immediately.
Thank you, Councillor Tapinos. Councillor Bolton?
I'd like to speak in favour of this, and I think, there have been some particular groups of residents talking to council about problems with their area being zoned incorrectly. But one of the reasons, and a lot of those are in the more Brunswick area, and some of them are, in sort of in a street where it might be heritage one side, but not heritage the other side, and so forth. But one of the reasons I support this is because I feel that we didn't get it right in the northern part of Moreland, and I think the residents of Glenroy and Fawkner have really copped it in terms of the number of development applications. And obviously there do have to be units in areas. It can't all just be housing. Some people do want to live in smaller dwellings and downsize and that kind of thing. But I feel that things have really escalated in Fawkner and Glenroy, and I think there's a lot of stress by residents in the northern part of Moreland with unexpected levels of development in that area. So I actually think it's not just the pockets where which council has identified, but actually in the northern part of Moreland, where residents haven't been as well organised as residents in the south. So I actually do support this proposal. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Abood?
Yes, I'm rising to support this motion and also to commend Councillor Ratnam on this motion, because this is the kind of stuff that is not my strength, and I think that it's a real asset to the whole council that each of us have our own strengths, and so I'm really grateful that this work is on the table.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Is there any further discussion from councillors? If not, I'll put Councillor Ratnam's motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. Okay, councillors, will now move on to another notice of motion, social and economic cohesion, NOM 2317, and that's Councillor Bolton.
So the motion is 1, to support the proposal to partner with Fawkner Community House to develop a social and economic inclusion project in Melbourne's northern suburbs, and makes an allocation in the 2017-18 budget. 2, that a further report come to council to identify which of the 3 options for the program is most feasible, with the 3 options being A, to continue the existing level of work in Fawkner with a part-time worker, B, expand the project to a full-time position to mainly target Fawkner, but also do some work in Glenroy and Hadfield, and C, expand the initiative to fully cover Moreland's North, with the emphasis being on Fawkner, Hadfield and Glenroy.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Ratnam, do you wish to second? Yes. Councillor Bolton, do you wish to speak?
Okay, so I would like to commend this to council. For some time, council has had a discussion about levels of poverty and disadvantage in the northern part of Moreland, especially the northern strip of suburbs, Fawkner, Glenroy and Hadfield. And the food systems report, the food system strategy that we voted on earlier tonight, talks about some figures about numbers of people who don't have to go through periods where they don't have enough money to eat. So this motion was initiated as a result of a discussion that the North East Ward councillors had at Fawkner Community House about a program which they'd run with a grant from the state government, which had run out. It involved 3 elements. One was economic inclusion with an employment mentoring program, which had been very successful. A social mentoring program to connect newly arrived migrants with local services and employment mentors, and an anti-racism leadership training program for newly arrived residents, including Muslims, young people, women and men, to deal with difficult situations and potentially violent situations that they may confront. In particular, the economic inclusion part was introducing newly arrived migrants to employment mentors to get their feet established in a new society and to link up with people. And since the program ended, there are a whole lot of employment mentors contacting the part-time worker who's not funded anymore, doing this voluntarily, to say that they're now in a position to take advantage of the economic inclusion program. If this project just stops and doesn't get any funding for another 2 years or a year, it means that those linkages will have to be re-established from scratch. At the moment, there's still a lot of contact with the employment mentors, as well as the people seeking mentorship to gain employment. And as we know, that unemployment and underemployment is massively escalating in Australia, and we've got some major major employment places closing down in the northern suburbs, leading to a lot of unemployment. So I'd like to commend. I'm not suggesting any kind of monetary element because there needs to be further investigation about which of the three options would be most suitable for council.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Ratnam, do you wish to? Right. Councillor Abood?
I wonder if I can make an amendment again.
Sure.
I've emailed you, James. So what I'm asking is if we can keep point 1 as it is and then replace point 2 to read, that a further report come to council outlining the proposed scope of the planned social inclusion plan and options for building on the work of Fawkner Community House. And if I have a seconder,
Well, perhaps Councillor Bolton, is that something that you would agree to include in your motion?
To just keep it as is.
Could it be an additional point? Could it be additional instead of replacement?
I don't know if I'm meant to speak.
So just some advice. So if it's an additional point, then it would read that there's a further report on point 2 and then there's a further report on point 3. We would pragmatically try to make it one report, but it would be addressing the 3 options as well as addressing the proposed scope of the planned social inclusion work.
Point, I'd be happy. Yeah, if it's an additional point, I'd be happy to.
Councillor Abood, would you agree to making it an additional point instead of removing those others, or did you want to remove the others?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. I just don't know how much. My concern is that we get hemmed in with the 3 options. So I guess to add a point 2 is fine because we can assess the whole thing when it comes back.
All right.
So it'd be a point 3.
Sorry, point 3. Yeah.
Okay.
So just for clarity, for the minute taking, so we are seeking not to replace point 2, but to add point 3, which is a new point, and that would be, and we would be treating it all within the same report, rather than 2 different reports, but we would be addressing all that.
And that's
all the
agreeable
material.
to Councillor Bolton, is that correct?
Yeah, if it's just a third point.
And to Councillor Ratnam?
likewise.
Okay, all right. So is there any further discussion on Councillor?
Yeah, now that point 2 is staying, I'm a little bit confused, particularly point 2B, which talks about employment and employment of full-time positions and staff. I would have thought that was in the realm of the CEO and not within the realm of the governance of council.
Sorry, Councillor Tapanos, could you repeat that?
I just wanted clarification whether, particularly dot point 2B, which talks about employment of a full-time position, and whether that was within the realm of governance or within the realm of management. And I just wanted the CEO's view.
So through the chair, and this is common advice that I'm often providing, that we, the decisions about how a thing is delivered are usually organisational decisions. The employment matters are organisational decisions. We would be responding in a report making those statements. I think the spirit of what's being asked is to consider whether it's existing or expanded. So we would have to work out how to express that in the report. But Councillor Tapanos is correct. Those decisions about whether it is the hiring of a person are organisational decisions. I think the spirit asks for something about expansion rather than the exact method by which that happens, and we would be advising that in a further report. Yes. Probably also the other thing, really just want to check, can we remove the word further report from point 3, because it does suggest a second report. If you could remove further, that would be great for us.
Yes.
In there.
You're happy with that in point 3? You're happy with that?
Just say that our report come to council.
Can I just make a comment?
Councillor Abood?
Yeah, is it the right time to say something about this? My comment is just that my concern was about closing that my point 3 expands the opportunities for what the outline proposal might include, as opposed to limiting it to those 3 options. So,
I think this allows it all to be explored.
Okay, yeah.
Sorry, Councillor Ratnam.
Just a suggestion to heed that point, Councillor Abood, perhaps put the word other in front of options in point 3, so that canvasses other options in the report.
Yeah.
Okay, so that to the sentiment of what you're asking for, you want other options to come to council beyond those 3. If you put the word other before options in point 3, perhaps that will address that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
So can we just be very clear about what you're asking, just to make sure we've reflected that?
Yeah.
Can you just repeat that for the minute takers?
In point 3, just before, in the second line, before options, insert the word other.
Inclusion plan and other options. Yeah. Councillor Bolton and Councillor Bood, is that agreeable to you to have?
It's agreeable to me.
Yep. Okay.
A tiny point, I do think the word "the" is better in the third rather than because it's sounding like it's another report, whereas the report is what we want the report to say.
I agree with that.
Yeah. So I think if we replace the word with the, it's better.
Yes, Councillor Tapper. Yes.
Thank you. I'm actually going to speak against this, and I do so on process. Normally at council, we develop quite detailed, substantial policies that go out for consultation and reports that detail how we are addressing most of these community needs and what we want to see. And we have a very, very detailed human rights policy. And there is a need, as you see in the report, to develop a social cohesion or social inclusion section of that. And I know that there is money in the budget, $30,000, to do that, to do it holistically across the whole city, and to do it on an evidence-based model and present to this council after consultation for ratification a policy that has been thoroughly determined by council after hearing the community. And I just feel that when we have these types of motions which may highlight good work that's occurring by one community house in one section of the community, we might be neglecting that there is a whole range of other work that occurs in other parts of the city, other projects that are as successful, if not more. And I do think that when we allow officers to do their work and develop that strategic policy, and it's coming, it's funded in the budget, we would get this work, get the objective you really want, and get a better outcome than just constantly be moving these types of notice of motions. And they might be great in raising awareness of good work that occurs in the city, but I really do think from a process perspective, we should be focusing on the big picture on a broad level, and that is through our human rights policy and particularly the social inclusion chapter within that policy, and that is the way to go. So on that basis and that basis alone, I'm not going to be supporting this, and I look forward to engaging councillors in the community in the work to come after we allocate the money for it in the upcoming budget.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Councillor Ratton, do you wish to
speak to the motion as has been amended? I agree, Councillor Tapanos, that we need to have planned strategic actions, and we do have a human rights policy which provides an overall framework, and I note the other work that's coming in terms of social cohesion and looking at all the options. But the reason I rise to support this is because we got to hear from the community house. It was an invitation open to all councillors to attend a presentation of their work. We have been very familiar with their work, and council has been supporting their work over many years. And in the case that they presented to us, which I believe requires our more immediate action. Ideally, we wait as part of the strategic plan to consider all the other options. But I think that the momentum that was built in some of the work they had done is lost if we wait for that process to finish before funding them further. And I believe, it takes a long time to do, really substantive community development work. It takes years often developing the identity of a project, building relationships, which only start to pay off often a year or two into that work. And with the nature of contract funding at the moment, most organisations can get maybe 1 to 2 years of funding, and then it's really precarious, and it undermines the whole point of long-term community development work. And I'm hearing from the Faulkner Community House, they've started some incredible work. We got to see the presentation of that work. I believe that we really benefit as an entire city and as a council from organisations like the Community House doing incredible social cohesion work, and I believe you're one of the few, it's very unique in terms of the types of work that the Community House is doing, and I want to see that continue. I don't want to see the momentum lost, and yes, ideally it'd be part of a bigger strategic plan, but we have been supporting them over many years, and I believe that we have enough evidence and the case has been built for us to support this now.
Thank you, Councillor Ratton. Is there any further discussion from councillors?
Have to close the vote if there's no other
discussion? Okay, Councillor Bolton.
I think there has been an emphasis in Moreland in recent times of wanting to do more of the social inclusion work focused on the northern part of Moreland, because all of the statistics in terms of unemployment and poverty and people going for periods of the year without food are greatest in that northern strip of suburbs. I also feel it's very important that we don't just pay lip service to social inclusion, but actually carry out some real programs that have some real impact on people's lives and on knitting the community together. I think if council was able to partner with Fawkner Community House in this, and they've already been in discussions with the Glenroy Learning Centre, which is not a neighbourhood house, but has probably some characteristics of a neighbourhood house. They've already been having those discussions. Sorry? It is. Okay, sorry if I've got that wrong. So there's already been some discussion with the Glenroy Learning Centre about this plan and about trying to develop the links to be able to enact this in Glenroy. So it is a program which has worked. We'd lose that if we just axe it right now. There is a chance that if the council can work out a way of supporting it, that we might be able to get funding from either state government or else some of the other, I'm not sure of the right term, non-government organisations or charities that provide grants for this sort of work. But probably some of those organisations wouldn't provide grants just cold without some sort of signal from council that there's support for the work. I feel that the program has really earned its stripes, and I really think it's important that this keep going. Otherwise, we're just back to the drawing board, and it will take considerable resources to build up the program to what it achieved by the end of the program.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Seeing that there's no further discussion, I'll put Councillor Bolton's motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Okay.
Now, could we bring urgent business for? I'm just aware that's been
Yes, that's our next item.
All right, sure.
Okay, so now if there is any reports in urgent business?
Yes, in accordance with the section of the Act, I'd like to move that an urgent business item be placed on the agenda to deal with the location of the Methven Park toilets. And the motion I'm proposing is that council place an immediate stop on the installation works for the new public toilet in Methven Park, that a report be presented to council in June about possible alternative locations for the installation of the new Methven Park toilet to be determined by council.
Okay, so the motion that we're going to put to council is that, is this considered urgent business? And I'm not sure if councillors want to go over the meeting procedure, but it says that it relates or arises out of a matter which has arisen since the distribution of the agenda, or either cannot safely or conveniently be deferred until the next ordinary meeting, or involves a matter of urgency as determined by the Chief Executive Officer. So that's what we'll be voting on.
Need a seconder?
Yeah,
I'm happy to
I
second.
mean, it's, thank you, Councillor Bolton. The construction is currently being undertaken, so if this were to be an item in the next council agenda, I'm afraid that the construction would have already occurred.
Right.
So it is, for that reason, in my view, and I propose that it is a matter that is urgent and needs to be dealt with tonight.
Thank you for that clarification. So, Councillor Bolton, you wish to...
No, I think the residents made the case earlier
No,
about
but do you wish to
urgency.
second? Do you wish to second that? Did
I'm
you
happy to second the motion, but also to second that this be
Okay,
brought
so we'll do
forward.
one step at a time.
Yeah.
So, whether or not it's urgent business. So, all those...
Can we just
clarify,
just in terms of the point of urgency, just to ask a question of clarification. There's a mention in there of, so there's two separate items. It's about whether it's urgent and then the substantive nature of what's actually being asked for. So to assess the urgency, has it genuinely arisen since the distribution of the agenda? My sense is the opposition to it has arisen since the distribution of the agenda because the construction has begun, but the actual issue has been in the purview of council for a number of months. Can we just get some advice on, can it genuinely be considered urgent when the matter has been decided by previous council resolutions and councillors have been involved in the deliberation and discussion about the location for months? Just wanted to know that.
No resolution.
Just through the mayor, it's not specific enough to say, it's quite broad. Those two statements are the only statements that guide what's urgent business. So it doesn't necessarily say, I think this is actually the topic of your debate, and that's actually how you want to interpret that and part of whether you do believe it to be urgent or not. It doesn't really give us very specific guidance other than those two statements.
No.
So it would be hard for me to say that would preclude it or include it.
And the point for point B, so point A is the part that you're referring to, whether or not it's arisen since the distribution of the agenda, but then there's an or in there. So it doesn't say and, it's an or. And then the following part after that, it says cannot conveniently be deferred. And I think Councillor Tapanos said that because the construction has been somewhat started, it cannot, if that's my interpretation, cannot conveniently deferred. And then the other alternative is that it involves a matter of urgency as determined by the CEO. So there's those three alternatives.
Can I move a procedural motion that we lay this on the table until we have had an adjournment, just to clarify these points? It's just been brought up at the last minute. Genuinely has.
Can I speak before you do that?
I've moved the procedural item motion to lay this on the table.
So as there's been a procedural motion, we don't need to vote on that.
We do need to vote on it.
We don't need to debate it, sorry, councillors. So we'll vote on the procedural motion to lay it on the table. Yep. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that lost. Yes. Okay, so
Speak to the urgency. Can you explain? Are we allowed to ask that?
so questions from the gallery can't be engaged in at this point, but just for clarification, we're just debating whether or not this encompasses the elements of urgency under the meeting procedure law. Okay.
On the agenda.
To admit it onto the agenda. So the substantive debate that you're here for hasn't occurred as yet because we're debating more of a procedural matter. Okay, so
to the urgency.
Yes, Councillor Bolton.
So Councillor Tapanos explained the urgency in terms of the construction beginning. I think there's another reason why it's urgent business, and that is while yes, council did vote, I think a year ago or so, to put a public toilet in Methven Park, we never voted on location or anything like that. So, I was unaware of any of the discussion about the location until I think yesterday or something when an email did come through. So, I was not aware that there was an issue until after the agenda has been on the public site. And I think, and obviously it is urgent if residents only just realised about this and this is after the agenda. So I think it meets the characteristics of urgent business on both elements.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Is there any further discussion from councillors?
Yeah,
Councillor
sorry. I don't think you can argue it's not urgent because if we wait till the next council meeting, by far and away most of the construction will have occurred. So let's debate the actual item. Let's move on from whether it's urgent or not, because it is urgent. Because if we wait any longer, then it almost makes any moves to relocate the toilet redundant if largely the park has been torn up and work has commenced. So let's agree that it is urgent and then move on to the debate on whether we want to agree with Tapanos, Councillor Tapanos's motion.
Okay. Is there any further discussion from councillors, or I'm not sure if Councillor Frani is alluding to the motion being put, but
Sure, okay.
Okay. Is that correct?
Sure, I'm speaking in favour of the urgency. Yes.
Okay. Not that the motion be put. All right. So, councillors, is there any further discussion? No? Okay. Are you okay? Well, in that case, I'll put the motion to the vote. whether or not this can be considered as urgent business. So, councillors, all those in favour? Okay, I declare that carried unanimously. So, now we'll move on to the substantive part of Councillor Tapanos's urgent business item.
Thank you, Mayor and councillors. Now, I've typed this up very quickly, so I'm happy to hear some suggestions if that may be. But that council placed an immediate stop on the installation of works for the new public toilet in Methven Park, full stop, and that a report be presented to council in June about possible alternative locations for the installation of the new Methven Park toilet to be determined by council, full stop.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Is there a seconder? Councillor Bolton. Sorry.
Can we make it from an officer-based perspective on the timing? So the June reports are due in the system in 2 weeks. So if you specify June, I'm not sure whether we're going to be able to get it in on time. If you've put a stop to the works, well then they're stopping. They're not going to proceed. So, giving us some leeway on the time frame for the next report might be useful because 2 weeks is pretty much all we've got to turn it over. So
well, I'm sure that's fine. I'm happy to remove June and leave that to the discretion of officers. I just did want to note that
as soon as possible.
This toilet's been removed from the budget previously. It's really been 4 or 5 years, so I don't want to delay it any further. I just want to find a better location.
As soon as possible might be.
Well, I'm happy to have that as soon as possible.
Okay, and am I correct that Councillor Bolton seconded this?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
And I'll speak in favour of it now. And I'm aware that it's always difficult to find a location for a public toilet. And we have this discussion every time we install a public toilet about its location. But I'm also aware that around the table here we talk quite often about open space and the need to create more open space, particularly in the southern part of the municipality. And it just seems to me that it's quite counterproductive to be placing a toilet facility in the middle of open space that is enjoyed by the community, when we could find an alternative location on the perimeter of the park. Now, it's not easy, and I know that on one perimeter it's not possible at all. It's not ideal. On the other side, there is a big factory on one side, and I know that big factory might be developed, but I say, let that be their problem. If they want to develop an apartment block, let them work around the public facility. Why are we thinking about how are they going to develop their property before we put a facility in? Why don't we put a facility in and let them work around our public facility? So I don't see that as a legitimate reason to not put it on that side. I also don't see why other areas can't be investigated. So I do think a solution is possible that can please residents and have the public toilet installed as soon as possible. And I like to have the report, and effectively that's all I'm asking for is a report. I'm not asking for a decision tonight about where it goes, just a report to outline exactly what are the pros and the cons of each location. And if that work's being done by council officers, then it won't be difficult to present that to us for a decision. This also goes to the point of democratic local government, where we do have an issue that arises from the community. I think it is important that those decisions are determined in this chamber. I know that there's been consultations, I know that there's been discussions, participated in those, and we went and saw it on site. But I think as opposed to saying, yeah, I'll give you the nod here, or yeah, okay, I'm not happy, but there's not much more, I think let's get the information in a report and let's have the debate here where the community can hear us. That is part of our democratic role and democratic nature of local government. So all I'm saying today is vote this motion up to put a hold. Yes, it may cost us something more. Yes, we need to talk to the contractor, but we can do that. And allow all the information to be presented to us, allow the community to have a say, and allow the democratically elected councillors to make this decision.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos.
But then Councillor Bolton doesn't want to speak, but I do want to speak.
Councillor Bolton, did you wish to speak as seconder?
I might just wait a bit and
Okay,
see.
Councillor Cavanagh.
Before I speak, could I ask the officer 2 questions?
Yes.
Could you give us an idea of the financial implication of such a decision tonight? because I'm punctual, because it's an urgent item. We haven't had that, whereas we have that in other reports. And also the claim about the impending development and the reason that the claim that the reason it's not put in there is to basically not to upset the future development, the validity of those claims.
Through the Mayor, in answer to the first question, there is a current contract to build the toilet, and given the lateness of the notification, I haven't been able to determine what the financial cost would be, either in delay, etc., in pausing the construction. In relation to the location of the toilet, as has been alluded to, there's been a lot of consultation, or 2 rounds of consultation undertaken. There are some physical constraints about where the toilet can go as well, in the sense of where sewage connections are, power and water, etc., are available. So it's not the toilet can go anywhere in the park perspective. In relation to the factory, I'm not aware there is a current development application for the factory. So it is, a blank site in that sense.
Okay. Can I speak against the motion, please? Speak against the motion. I've been around long enough to see many public toilet arguments and speed hump arguments. They're the 2 things that polarise communities, I reckon, more than anything else. And you'll get a street and you'll have half the members passionate about having a public toilet and half the members not. Yes, there has been a letter drop to 140 households. Yes, only 17 supported it, that's true. But my experience is when people don't want something, they're the ones that respond to letter drops, etc. Only 6 responded out of the 140 saying they don't want it. As I say, my experience is when people don't want something, they're the ones that answer those droplets, whether they be about toilets or whether they be about speed humps. Yes, and it does concern me that many times we're getting right to the very end of the process, and where West Street was the same. Right? West Street, we got right to the end of the process. I think that probably cost council around $120,000, and now it's been put in, and I haven't heard one issue since then. No, I think I'm not supportive of it, of delaying this. I understand that the people that aren't happy, but I've been around long enough to see that is always the case. And yes, of the 23 respondents that we had, 17 and then it said yes, 6 said no, and I do believe that the no's are the ones that garner support more so than the yes. So I won't be supporting it. Okay.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Riley?
Yes, I stand to oppose this motion. I've met on site there, and I appreciate that people have concerns, and I met with my fellow councillor, and I'm very surprised that he's standing here tonight saying that we should go back and revisit it when we're actually just let the contract. I'm very concerned about the fact that we're going to actually incur more costs when that's not good use of our resources and so on. I could fully support Councillor Kavanagh's comments around the process has been undertaken. There's been 2 rounds. There have been 120. I'm not sure it was 140 jobs, okay, 120 at least. Okay. And whatever the outcome, there are going to be people who aren't necessarily happy with it. And we've been to that site. It's a small park. There are very few positions in which to put it. And the discussions that I had with my fellow councillor and with the director was that we would try and locate it convenient to the food facilities and so on, rather than have them separated across the park. And it's not ideal, but it's probably one of the best positions at this point. And given that we've let the contract, I'll be very reluctant to support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Councillor Carly-Hannon?
I rise to speak in favour of this motion. I think that talking about the importance of public space, I mean, we've talked endlessly about how little public space we have and how important it is that we do our best to utilise this space. It seems to me that if we're talking about a small park, we've also been talking about buying land to turn into small parks, and it is actually really important that we consider every bit of open space that we have to be really valuable and to ensure that we are protecting it as though it were any other council facility. So I'm a big advocate for our public toilets, And I recognise how important it is that we find a solution for this public toilet and that we don't extend the period in which people do have access to this public toilet. However, to put it in the middle of excellent parkland that can be used for picnics and for children to be able to play is not acceptable, and we should be looking for all the other alternatives and have a report so that we actually know what decision we're making.
Councillor Ratnam and then Councillor Bolton.
I too would like to oppose the motion, and I do that very reluctantly. I don't want to be in this position, but I want to explain why. This has been a very long process, as you have been part of and have heard since 2014, and Councillor Kavanagh and I were both on the previous council, so was Councillor Tapanos, when we deliberated this over a number of years. We had to put a hold on the installation of the toilet in the previous location because of funding issues, and we needed another toilet in Bush Reserve. At that time, we got so much opposition, so much feedback from the community that they were so unhappy with the delay in installing this public toilet, and that was really unfortunate. We had to do it at that stage, but we have tried to then do it as quickly as possible in this financial year. We have looked at the other locations, and it's unfortunate that this has come in the 11th hour. And I'm disappointed, Councillor Tapanos, because since January we've been talking about this, and there have been opportunities to raise this with Council and bring this earlier. And I had been under the assumption that Councillor Tapanos had been supportive of it because he didn't raise anything before tonight. And it means that we don't have the other information that could have backed up this discussion about looking at the feasibility of all the other sites. My understanding is that this is actually one of the few sites that we have the option to place a toilet on. The northern boundary, we're going to, I've heard some arguments around that as well, but I don't actually think it's a feasible site. And we can get that background knowledge. It's already there, it has been considered. We reconsidered the position of the toilet in 2015 when the location was changed, because a group of residents came to us and said they weren't happy with that second position of the toilet, and that's when the second round of consultation happened. And it's actually rare that we do a second round of consultation, and I'm sorry that some of you missed that consultation and weren't aware of it. We apologise. And the sample size, unfortunately, we don't control that, but what we have the responsibility to do is to try and make people as aware as possible by dropping the letters, and it's unfortunate that more people didn't respond.
There's no further comments.
And yes, while it's a small sample size, that is the data that we have to go on. We have looked at the other sites, and I don't actually believe that there's another more feasible site that has the public support that this one does, small as it may be from the sample that was returned.
And please, we have paid you the respect by listening to your questions, so please allow Councillor Ratnam to finish what she said.
I do believe that we have to install this toilet as soon as possible, because we have got a lot of feedback that it's urgent and it's necessary. And just in terms of a comparison, there is another toilet of this dimension that was recently installed in Jones Park, in the middle of Jones Park. So in terms of this discussion of open space, and I watched that construction and too was wondering what kind of impact this would have on the park. I would encourage you to go and look at Jones Park and look at what it's done to that site. Actually, my experience of it has been that it's been really minimal in terms of incurring on the open space, and has been of great benefit to that surrounding community, who often would get knocks on the door when people had to use a toilet for many, many years. This is overdue, and I'm sorry that we're not able to heed the concerns that you have. I hear that frustration, absolutely. I just think we're too far down this process, and the toilet is needed urgently.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Bolton?
I'd like to speak in support of the motion. I don't claim to be an expert in Methven Park. I've visited it, but I don't frequent it, and I haven't been involved in any of the discussions about the locations of the toilet. And my experience with these things is there's certain expert knowledge from the council officers, and particularly the directors indicated that there are only certain locations that can't go in absolutely anywhere around the park. But also, in my experience, also sometimes residents who live in a space, who use the space the most, sometimes have some unique knowledge that councillors and council officers don't necessarily have. And sometimes surveys, I haven't seen this particular survey, sometimes questions can be unclear on surveys. I'd actually like to be sure that it is being properly located, and that there isn't any other alternative that might not chop the open space up so much. I guess I'd like to support the residents in this. Yes, I know there's a cost, but I also sometimes think when we disregard the views of residents, or we make decisions in confidential business and residents aren't aware of those decisions, then sometimes I think we can make mistakes, because sometimes there are elements of how a space is used or a street's used that we're not aware of, that only the people who frequent that area on a regular basis really know and understand. So I'm supporting the resolution.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Franny?
Yes, I rise to speak in favour of Councillor Tapanos's motion. The champion of the South, Councillor Tapanos, has listened to the residents and asked us to pause any further construction whilst we get further information on whether this particular location is best placed for a toilet. That's all right. That's all we're talking about. Just a pause, because the residents' views may be completely valid here. Now, Councillor Kavanagh asked two very valid questions to the Director regarding the financial implications and also the validity of the concerns regarding the development opportunities. And I didn't really get any confidence that there's going to be any significant cost implications either way, and I didn't really hear any concerns regarding there are particular planning things in progress that may be impacted by putting a toilet closer to that particular boundary. So I'd just like to pause, get this report, and then make an informed decision with residents regarding the location of this toilet.
Thank you, Councillor Franny. Councillor Abood?
I just had a question about any legal implications. If we go to the builders and say, okay, stop work, does that impact on us as an organisation who's consulted, awarded a tender, got the awarded proponent, if that's the language, to go ahead with the work, and then we say, okay, stop? Do you know anything, Grant?
Through the Mayor, like all contracts that are let, we potentially face delay damages the contractor could seek from us. I don't know the costs of those off the top of my head, but all construction contracts normally have a clause in them if the client, us in this case, cause a delay to the contractor who's geared up, ready to go, and we then pause and they're sitting there not earning any income and don't have another job to go to, we can be sought for damages, and I don't know the answer to the cost of that, if there are any.
Thank you, Grant.
Can I make a comment about that? So I won't be supporting the motion. I've had a lot of emphasis on, as a new councillor, I have to adhere to the governance of the council, and I've had a lot of that from Councillor Tapanos, and I would suggest that the champion of the South has listened to the radio, in fact. And I've already been yelled at by the gallery, so I'm going to put my hand up for toilets, and I'm going to put my hand up for the fact that the council, which it's quite a tough job being a councillor but also a council officer, have done this work, and I fully support that it should continue. And I'm really sorry that this has happened for all of us.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Is there any further discussion?
Close the debate?
Yes.
If there's no further.
Councillor Tapanos?
Okay. Just a couple of comments on what's been heard. I mean, in regards to the alterations to a contract, I mean, we're probably keeping the same contract out. I mean, it's about doing something here or doing something there. Of course, it's going to cause a delay. I think contractors sometimes have goodwill in regards to these matters, particularly when they're dealing with a big organisation. But yes, I cannot say that there won't be a penalty. There may. But I can tell you this is not the East-West link. This is not a big project. It's a public toilet. It's not, in my view, going to be too much of an inconvenience for a contractor to pause and wait for a decision, which will come hopefully as soon as possible. So I don't think cost is really at the core of the issue. I think it is about a park in an area where we don't have a lot of open space, a park which is listed as heritage, which is over 100 years old, which has some beautiful elm trees, which we've invested so much in this park, in irrigation systems, preserving those elm trees in the middle of a drought, a park that is used by the local community, many of whom are starting to live in increasing proliferation of apartment dwellings. I think it's about that open space, that small patch But it is about that. That is the core issue. And it is, do we preserve that or do we build something on it? And I think, yes, ideally we would have made this decision earlier. And I admit, I remember that meeting at the park occurred because I requested it. And I heard the officer's view and I thought it was fine. But then subsequently I also heard the view of many residents. And I thought that, well, this warrants a second look. And that's the conclusion I came up with today after reading the emails and after speaking to residents. So my apologies that this didn't come straight away. But sometimes when we hear different pieces of evidence, different pieces of information, we can change our mind. And I think this is one that warrants another look at the location. I've been to Jones Park, and I can tell you Jones Park is huge. There's a lot of open space in comparative to Methven Park. And even then, I think the toilet does stick out. It would have been great if it was in the perimeter. I do think Jones Park is not a good example. And if councillors go and you will see how it sticks out, you will notice it, that it's probably, we could have put it on the perimeter and done better. I also like to say that it is urgent. We moved a motion to take it out of the budget a few years ago. I didn't support it at the time. And I think that a lot of these 17 supporters to the petition are basically just fed up and saying, please get it done. They're basically probably commenting on the need of the toilet more so than the location. Now, that's an assumption. I haven't seen it. I haven't seen the reasons for support, but I can imagine that support has probably come for the need of the toilet. We're not questioning that. There is no doubt about that.
Councillor Tapanos,
let's find a better location for it.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Right, I'll put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? All those against?
Can we have a division on that? Because I think Oscar was in favour.
Right, sorry, Oscar, how are you voting? 4? Yep, okay. So we'll just do that again for record keeping. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that lost. Okay, councillors, I think...
can I call a division?
A division? Okay. Councillor Tapanos has called a division. Would you like us to raise our hands again? You've got it? We've got it. Okay.
Voted for. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think we may call for a short adjournment at this point because we'll return to the substantive agenda following this. So all those in favour of a 5-minute adjournment? All those against? I declare that carried. All right. Thank you.
My name is Michael Tortoni. I'm the founder of Melbourne's legendary jazz club, Bennett's Lane. I've recently moved to the very, very cool Brunswick. The Jazz Lab here on Leslie Street, Brunswick is Melbourne's new home of jazz. In my old club, you might have seen Prince for a late night set, or the Wynton Marsalis Band, or even the Harry Connick Jr. Trio. My new club will also host stars of contemporary music, starting with the Bill Frisell Trio for the Melbourne International Jazz Festival, as well as local stars. So drop in for some great music and a drink at the Jazz Lab.
So my name is Zainab Abouid. I'm 19 years old and I currently study the Bachelor's of Law and International Relations at La Trobe University. I partake in my local community by volunteering with local MPs such as Peter Khalil. I like to also attend and organise events that surround family violence to help ensure that women are heard and young women have voices. I wanted to represent myself as a Muslim woman and represent my community, so I thought why not start at a young age, so when I grow up perhaps I can be in Parliament one day. I feel like I should take advantage of these opportunities and make sure that I advocate on behalf of women, especially in my community that are subjected to family violence.
Hi, I'm Helen Davidson, Mayor of Moreland. I'm standing in Glenroy where there were meant to be noise walls. as promised by Daniel Andrews in the 2014 state election campaign. Some of the noise walls have been built, but much of Glenroy has been forgotten. I wonder how the residents here slept last night. Residents tell me their school-aged kids get up in the morning tired and they can't concentrate in class. Now, a little more than 2 years since Daniel Andrews became Premier, it's incredibly disappointing to learn the state government has no plans to extend the noise walls in this area. Our community's health is at risk, and both myself and other councillors continue to receive calls from residents asking for our help. Come on, Premier Andrews, keep your promise to the people of Glenroy.
My name's Leslie. I have been with Moreland Family Daycare as an educator for over 36 years, I think. Family Daycare is a wonderful organisation. We look after children in our own home, they blend in with the family, and it's fantastic.
I love Family Daycare.
I can choose my own hours, very flexible. I've made wonderful friendships with lots of the families. I'm now looking after children of the children I used to care for. The children just growing and developing is a wonderful, wonderful experience for me every day. I'd recommend Family Daycare to anybody and everybody. Oh, where's my Scouty snuggle? Where's my Scouty snuggle? Can I have a Scouty snuggle? How's your tea party going?
My name's Hilary. I've been with Moreland Family Daycare for 8 months now and I absolutely love it. The main reason I started with Family Daycare was to be with my little one. Family Daycare is a small environment, so mostly I only have 4 children and it's in a home. Moreland have been really supportive of the whole thing and they helped me find children when I first started. There's so many benefits of working in Family Daycare and becoming an educator. Working in your own home, flexible hours, also just watching the other children grow and being such a part of their life. I recommend to educators that want a good life balance if they have their own child. Family Daycare is a great avenue to go down.
Hey Moreland, today I'm down in St Kilda for the Midsummer Pride March supporting the LGBTQ community. It's a beautiful day. I'm proud to be here representing Moreland, walking behind so many wonderful dedicated people. This march goes towards exactly what our values are. At Moreland, we're one community proudly diverse. More pride! More pride! More pride! More pride! More pride! More pride! So I've lived in Glenroy all my life. I've developed a great love of this municipality. It's provided me with a lot of services. I've enjoyed the facilities that Moreland has offered. For example, I used to come here as a child to the Oak Park pool. I would always get a 10-ticket ride pass for the slide in the summer. I remember doing laps and jumping into the pool at the deep end and playing on the pink elephant when I was very little. Another memory of mine is walking down the street to the Glenroy shopping strip. When me and my mum used to go down there, we'd always make sure we'd get a treat from the baker, stop off at the butcher and go read a book at the library. So all of those things, all of those services translate into urban planning, sporting facilities and supporting local business, which is part of what's so important to Moreland. Being a legal aid lawyer really helped with my understanding of the community, and I felt that I would be able to assist a broader community by becoming involved with local government. Moreland's gone through a huge change with many townhouses being built, and I'm looking forward to seeing more appropriate development and better standard and quality of development. So when I think of people that I want to assist in Moreland, I think about someone like my mum. So she's an older mum and she's given so much to me as an individual and to the community as a whole. There's many members of our community who may be a little bit more vulnerable or in a particular point in their life where they need a little bit more assistance, and I want Moreland to be able to help with that. So within the next 12 months, I'm looking forward to encouraging vigorous debate amongst councillors, that debate is well informed and that we're constantly going back out to the community and consulting with them. So ultimately, as a council, we're going to be most effective if we work together as a team, and I think we can achieve that.
I'm Moana Hope, most people call me Mo. I've grown up playing at Glenroy Football Club and now I play for Collingwood Football Club. I grew up in Glenroy, born and bred. My first year ever I played at Hatfield. From the second year all the way up to under 12, it's Glenroy Football Club. I'm one of 14, and the reason why I got into it was my dad and my brothers. I used to watch all their games from the age of 3. It was community football, so it was the best type of football.
So proud.
Local footy is really important. I think, especially Glenroy being a suburb and this being the main supplier of sports for the community. You look at what Glenroy are trying to do here, trying to bring up a women's team, and in the background is my niece who just finished under 12. So at the moment she hasn't got a pathway. So Melanie's played for Glenroy from the same age as me, from the age of 7, and she is now too old to play boys football. So she's excited about the girls team, aren't you?
Very.
So she's extremely competitive, not as good as me. Probably a few kids are not on the right road, and I think if you give them that sport or that outlet to go and meet new people, it can benefit the community in more ways than one. What do I say to girls? It doesn't matter who you are, what your skill level you are, what fitness level you are. It's a good environment to be in, it's fun, you meet new mates. This is where you want to be, so come down and have a kick.
So I'm Claire Johnston and I'm an accredited cricket bat maker and the first female in the world. I learnt how to make cricket bats from Ian Cullen. There's a lot of bats out there for men, and I felt that there was an opportunity there to actually work with women to make better bats and to actually make them for their style. So recently I was commissioned to make 5 cricket bats for the Pascoe Vale Headfield Cricket Club for their under-13s girls cricket team. And to see their faces when they were given the cricket bats was just brilliant. So what I'd really love to be able to do is to keep working with my local community, the local cricket clubs, particularly the women, and work to make great cricket bats.
My name is Michael Tortoni. I'm the founder of Melbourne's legendary jazz club, Bennett's Lane. I've recently moved to the very, very cool Brunswick. The Jazz Lab here on Leslie Street, Brunswick is Melbourne's new home of jazz. In my old club, you might have seen Prince for a late night set, or the Wynton Marsalis Band, or even the Harry Connick Jr. Trio. My new club will also host stars of contemporary music, starting with the Bill Frisell Trio for the Melbourne International Jazz Festival, as well as local stars. So drop in for some great music and a drink at the Jazz Lab.
So my name is Zainab Abouid. I'm 19 years old and I currently study the Bachelors of Law and International Relations at La Trobe University. I partake in my local community by volunteering with local MPs such as Peter Khalil. I like to also attend and organise events that surround family violence to help ensure that women are heard and young women have voices. I wanted to represent myself as a Muslim woman and represent my community, so I thought why not start at a young age, so when I grow up perhaps I can be in Parliament one day. I feel like I should take advantage of these opportunities and make sure that I advocate on behalf of women, especially in my community that are subjected to family violence.
Hi, I'm Helen Davidson, Mayor of Moreland. I'm standing in Glenroy where there were meant to be noise walls. as promised by Daniel Andrews in the 2014 state election campaign. Some of the noise walls have been built, but much of Glenroy has been forgotten. I wonder how the residents here slept last night. Residents tell me their school-aged kids get up in the morning tired and they can't concentrate in class. Now, a little more than 2 years since Daniel Andrews became Premier, it's incredibly disappointing to learn the state government has no plans to extend the noise walls in this area. Our community's health is at risk, and both myself and other councillors continue to receive calls from residents asking for our help. Come on, Premier Andrews, keep your promise to the people of Glenroy.
My name's Leslie. I have been with Moreland Family Daycare as an educator for over 36 years, I think. Family Daycare is a wonderful organisation. We look after children in our own home, they blend in with the family, and it's fantastic.
I love Family Daycare.
I can choose my own hours, very flexible. I've made wonderful friendships with lots of the families. I'm now looking after children of the children I used to care for. The children just growing and developing is a wonderful, wonderful experience for me every day. I'd recommend Family Daycare to anybody and everybody. Oh, where's my Scouty snuggle? Where's my Scouty snuggle? Can I have a Scouty snuggle? How's your tea party going?
My name's Hilary. I've been with Moreland Family Daycare for 8 months now and I absolutely love it. The main reason I started with Family Daycare was to be with my little one. Family Daycare is a small environment, so mostly I only have 4 children and it's in a home. Moreland have been really supportive of the whole thing and they helped me find children when I first started. There's so many benefits of working Family Daycare and becoming an educator. Working in your own home, flexible hours, also just watching the other children grow.
Thank you, everyone. We'll now return to the substantive agenda. We've previously gone through some notice of motions and other items that members of the gallery were here for. I believe the next item we have in planning and economic development is the Plan Melbourne 2017 to 2050.
I'd like to move a procedural motion to defer this based on advice from the officers to the next meeting.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Martin?
Procedural. Kirsten recommended that we defer it rather than trying to cram it.
Oh, okay. All those in favour for the procedural motion to defer the Plan Melbourne report? I declare that carried.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the review and determination of mayoral and councillor allowances for the next 4 financial years. Is there a councillor who wishes to move? Councillor Kavanagh?
I'll move the officer recommendation on page 125.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Abood? Any discussion? Right, Councillor Bolton.
I've got a foreshadowed resolution that I believe that the mayoral and council allowances should be more lined up with the median annual disposable income, which is lower than what we're voting on today. So I'll vote against this, and if this recommendation is voted down, I'll put my alternative resolution.
So it's a foreshadowed, or
It's a foreshadowed.
right?
Yeah.
Okay. So all those in favour? Is there any debate?
Not for me.
Councillor Ratner.
I'd like to speak to the motion, and especially given those foreshadowed motion was suggested as an amendment when this went out for consultation. So it's a 2-stage process. We've gone out for community consultation. I note that we haven't got any feedback back, so no opposition either to the allowance limits that have been set. And I just want to talk about the rationale. And I understand that Councillor Bolton's motion might bring up some questions about these levels of payment, and these are set essentially by the state government, and you can choose between a range, but the range is pretty narrow. I wasn't supportive of Councillor Bolton's amendment and wouldn't be supportive of Councillor Bolton's foreshadowed motion, because I think a reduction in these salary figures will have the perverse impact of only attracting people who have wealth to be on local government, because you will not be able to afford to both have a job, to be on council and be able to afford the rest of life. $29,000 might seem like a lot for an allowance, but councillors give 20, 30, sometimes more hours to their work on council. That is not actually remunerated. They do it for the passion and commitment they have to the community. Similarly, with the mayor's allowance, that should be commensurate with the wage that somebody might be able to get if they were working in another job. And I've heard from a number of people from local government, there's actually a push for that to be raised, because a lot of people say that stops a lot of high quality people who could be mayoral candidates from taking the position, because it would be such a step down in the salaries they receive, and they would not be able to support their families if they had a reduction from what they're already receiving. So I think these things should be questioned and debated. We have to keep a check on them, and we shouldn't have rises which are unquestioned. But I think we also have to provide a platform where everyday members of the community can participate in decision making at local government, and it doesn't exclude people who won't be able to afford it, and only attract people, as it once did, who are wealthy landowners to seat in decision making for the rest of the community.
Thank you, Councillor Ratner. Is there any
As will speak,
Councillor Kavanagh.
if there's no one else, I'll close the debate.
Any further speakers?
Yeah,
No?
actually, Councillor Ratnam's made a couple of good points there, and I think it's worth alluding to. I'm a school teacher, a primary school teacher, and a lot of people will argue that teachers are not well paid. Because I wasn't getting a council allowance when I was mayor, I took about a $20,000 pay cut to be mayor that year, you know, and I'm happy to have done it, but like, I'm not a huge income earner, but even as a school teacher, I had to take quite a major pay cut. And I think many other councillors have done the same when they take on the mayoral duties. I also want to point out that councillors can opt not to take their allowance, and in fact, one of the councillors I've served with in the past, I certainly claimed that that's what he did. I had no verification, but he claimed that that was the case. So if you wish to hand back, you're welcome to do so, or if you wish to donate it to charity, you're welcome to do so as well.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Is there any further discussion? No? Oh, Councillor Martin?
I would just also like to raise the fact that I work full-time, and I would love to be able to do council full-time. I would absolutely love, but I do not have the financial support and the ability. I mean, I want to buy my first house one day, and you know, at this rate, I'm not going to get it until I'm about 70 years of age. And I think that, you know, if we were paid more in this role, I would be able to give all of my time to the community, which is really what I want to do. And I want that on the record. So that's why I'm supportive of as it stands.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Abood.
Two things. One is I don't want a mayor who has a full-time job to support, because I don't think 40, whatever the... and also I can afford not to work, and I'm here way too often because I'm able to be. So I totally agree that we need to have a situation where there is remuneration for a mayor to be in a full-time role, and the right amount of remuneration for a person to do a part-time job.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Is there any further discussion from councillors? No? I'll put Councillor Kavanagh's motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare... all those against? I declare that carried. So we'll now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the financial management report for the period ending the 31st of March.
Is that on block? No, we didn't.
Yeah.
I'm happy to move financial management.
Councillor Tapanos, is there a seconder? Councillor Kavanagh. No, Councillor Kavanagh, do you wish to say anything?
Yeah, just one.
Sure.
There's a lot of figures in there, obviously, being a financial report, but there's one that jumped out at me that I think is worth alluding to, and it's on page 135. I think it was 135. I'm not sure if that's correct. Looking at that. Yes, it is. It's under the heading of transport management. Electricity payments are $320,000 underspent. Street lighting changeover from mercury vapour to LED has led to savings which are required to repay the loan used to fund the changeover costs. That was one of the things that was put to us when we did change the street lighting, when we had that bold idea of changing our street lighting, and it is bearing fruit. $320,000 less.
Yeah.
Right? So environmentally friendly and also saving money. Perfect.
Thank you for pointing that out, Councillor Faulkner. It's a good point. Councillor Abood.
I'd just like to commend the officers on achieving this incredible result, and the CEO obviously. Because I have too much time on my hands, I attended my first ever financial briefing, and I'm really impressed with the way this thing's running, and I think that you guys should be commended.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. If there's no further discussion, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. The next item is the proposed land swap with Darrelloon, College of Victoria. Councillor Bolton, is there a seconder? Councillor Abood. Councillor Bolton?
Yes, this has been been in discussion for several years now, and this was a very innovative idea. I think it was proposed by one of the previous councillors, Rob Thompson. And basically, there are a lot of parking issues around Darrell Ulam School and the mosque there. And Darrell Ulam owns some houses nearby, but they weren't right adjoining the school. There's public parkland owned by the council adjoining the school. So this is just a simple land swap of equivalent area in order that Darrell Ulam can try and remove some of the cars from the street. A lot of people in the area do walk to the mosque and walk to the school, but there are also people who duck out of work to go to the mosque. And this will really create a good solution for local residents as well as for the school, and resolve a bit of a sore point within the community. So I'd certainly like to see this go ahead. It's a good result.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Abood?
Yep, I just wanted to acknowledge that there is a public path on the site that we're gaining, which is used by cyclists and pedestrians, that I think needs to be noted, so that we can acknowledge in the future that that path will need to be preserved, but also that with the urban forest strategy in mind, there's some significant trees on the site as well of the land that we're gaining. So there's some buildings there as well, and I'm interested to know what will happen to them, but also if we can endeavour to keep in mind with what we're doing about trees and canopy in the city, that we need to try and preserve those trees as well.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Is there any further discussion from councillors?
I had a question in regards to the land we are gaining, and I'm fully supportive. I think it's actually a really, really good and innovative solution to the problem, and it's a win-win really. But have we made a determination in regards to the land that we are obtaining, whether that is going to be incorporated into what is left of Evans Reserve, and is there an additional cost to make that parkland?
Through the Mayor. The basis of the agreement is no net cost to council. That's the first thing. The second thing is that it's a land swap, and the land that we receive will be transformed into a park.
Good.
Thank you. Councillor Frani.
And just to add on to that, Councillor Tapanos, the land that we receive will be transferred into open space, and any costs associated with that will be borne by the college itself, so no cost to council. So this is a complete win-win for the community. The college itself expands its premises and can utilise that space for either education or parking or whatever reasons it intends to use it. We return a large section of park space back to the community, and there is no cost to council. So congratulations to former councillor Rob Thompson who initiated this, and well done to everyone that's supported it throughout from council's perspective.
Thank you, Councillor Frani. If there's no further discussion from councillors, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried.
Actually, could that be marked as unanimous?
Yes. Very good. Now, councillors, we are past the 10 o'clock mark, so I will need to call for a motion to extend. Councillor Abood, seconded by Councillor Riley. All those in favour to extend the meeting? I declare that carried. The next item on the agenda is under city infrastructure, and it's the bicycle strategy implementation. Councillor Ratton.
Thank you, Mayor. I would like to move a resolution that's an alternative to the one that's in the agenda. It's slightly reworded from the one that I circulated to councillors after some officer comments. I've amended it slightly, and I'll just read the points. So one is to note that this bicycle strategy implementation report demonstrates that A, council has delivered 24% of the projects to be delivered by the strategy, which is from 2011 to 2021, but is 56% the way through the time period to deliver all the projects aimed for in the strategy. Point two, that council develops a funding strategy within the next 6 months to redress this gap. This strategy will be underpinned by a commitment to fund all the projects contained in the strategy by 2021. And I have circulated the amendment to the officers.
6 months or 12 months?
So it's the funding strategy, to develop the funding strategy within 12 months, but for the strategy over the course of the lifetime, so that we receive that strategy in the next 6 months.
Oh, right, got it.
Point three is that council consults the public on the options for a new or revised formula for calculating expenditure on bicycle infrastructure as listed in the options contained in this report. And point four, that we report the outcomes of this consultation to council via council report. And if I have a second, I'm happy to speak to this alternative.
Thank you. Councillor Riley.
So, councillors, this is an alternative motion to the one that's in the report, and I thank the officers for the detail and the analysis that's contained in the report. It's really, really informative, and a number of councillors have been asking for how we're tracking along with the bicycle strategy. It's of concern to a significant proportion of our community who wants to see us move to more active transport, like public transport, pedestrian and cycling modes of transport, and away from the car. And this is a really important part of us delivering a number of strategic objectives: environmental, in terms of our neighbourhoods, reducing congestion and increasing active participation by the community. I think the report does highlight that we are behind in delivering the strategy, and as we come to budget time and setting the budgets for the next few years, I think we've got to be really conscious of how we achieve the strategy, given that we're behind in delivering the project. So that's why I'm asking for a funding strategy to be developed, that we have some consultation. I'm really particularly interested in hearing about what people think about the options for the revised formula. I know this has been debated in the past, but I think it is worth us going back to the community, particularly the bicycle user groups, to ask them feedback about how we should calculate and report the expenditure, and then following that feedback from the consultation, we make some decisions about whether we're going to change the formula for reporting and calculation.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Riley, do you wish to?
Reserve the right, yeah.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Kavanagh.
Just to say that Councillor Riley and myself met with BUG members last night and with the director and manager, and this was coming up as an issue and a concern that for all the best intentions, and there are many things in train. I think that report will show that, but it's worth getting an update again, so well done.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Is there any further discussion from councillors? Councillor Franny?
Yeah, just want to briefly thank John Englert also for coming along tonight and talking about the importance of extending the upfield bike path. We're very much in favour of that. It's something that a lot of residents in Fawkner are calling for. We tend to miss out a lot on bicycle infrastructure up north, and a lot of the roads in Fawkner are actually marked for bicycle usage either. So that would be one that could reinstate some of the levelness in terms of spreading the investment fairly throughout the municipality.
Thank you, Councillor Franny.
Just want to correct for the record up there, point two, just the second part of point two was that after we say gap, we put a dash, this strategy will be underpinned by a commitment to funding all the projects contained in the strategy by 2021. So it's a principle. I think Olivia has a word she'll type.
Right. Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Ratnam.
Unless there's anyone else.
No, Councillor Riley?
Look, I just wanted to thank you and councillors for your comments. The issue for me around much of this is actually understanding how it works. It's actually quite convoluted, and we need to get much snappier about this. We're relying on Vic Roads to do a lot of this, and they don't do an effing thing. So, well, they do, but it takes us a long time, and then our residents are waiting for this years and years. We've got people on the bug who've been doing this stuff for 8 or 9 years. I just want to say on their behalf, they actually don't want to be sitting around council chambers meeting with you officers. And I know as lovely as you are, they actually prefer to be outside riding and leading people around town. And we need to get to that vision. We need to have the shade. We need to have the really good amenity of this city developed. And we've got to get around Vic Roads, and we need to get around the state government that's put up quite considerable millions, which we haven't applied for yet. And I want us to get our head around the fact that this council needs to get ahead of the pack and applying for some of that money. It's not good enough that we leave that, because apparently most of that money is going to the City of Melbourne. Why should that happen when Moreland has been active in this space for a long time? And the northern areas of the city are the areas we need to get the bike riding happening and getting more women and girls on bikes and people from all sorts of backgrounds. So there's a lot of work to do, and I really urge you to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. I'll put that motion to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. The next item on the agenda is the Moreland graffiti strategy for 2017 to 2021. Is there a councillor? Councillor Riley?
Yes, I'm more than happy to stand and move this motion. I've been working...
Seconder? Yeah. Is there a seconder?
Seconder, please. Do I have
Councillor
a seconder now?
Bood?
No. Thank you, Councillor Bood. I just would like to say that I've been working with the railman community, which is just down in central Brunswick, between Brunswick Station and Jules Station and near Union Street. I urge you to go down and see that. It's probably graffiti central. Great opportunity for the media to go down and see what they're doing, but they're doing a lot of work in that little community around addressing the sort of intense graffiti work that's going on there. And the good thing is the council have come on board and are applying for a state government grant in this space. The policy didn't get much input from people, but it was valuable input, and I wasn't able to comment because I was too bogged down by other council work, but I have read it since, and I'm very commend councillors, officers for their work in this space and for the resourcing that we're putting into it, and I just would like us to endorse it. There's a lot of great reading about this that people can see what's happening in other municipalities. We are in there, and this is a chance for us to grow more shrubbery and trees to sort of as a solution to some of those bare walls that people like to tag and blast and all the other terms. So I really want to commend this work and thank the officers for all their input.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Councillor Bood? Is there any further discussion from councillors? Councillor Bolton.
I'd like to speak against the report. There's elements of it that I'm supportive of, and the report does make reference to the fact that, often the best way of combating graffiti is actually covering it over fairly quickly. And so those elements of, giving people kits and painting over graffiti and that kind of thing, fully supportive of. But I also feel that there's a punitive element of this. And I sort of feel that often, especially a lot of young people get criminalised. There's an emphasis on enforcement. And I think far better to have a more humane kind of approach to the problem, such as the painting over and that kind of thing. I also tend to think that there's a lot of different viewpoints as to what's graffiti and what's street art. I don't think there's any real common understanding of what's what. I mean, Banksy used to be regarded as a graffitiist and a vandal, and now his paintings are worth millions of dollars. Or not millions, I can't remember how much, but they're worth a lot of money. So I'm going to vote against this because I'm more opposed to the punitive elements, and I'd rather the more humane elements, which I think are much more effective with tackling graffiti.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Is there any further discussion from councillors?
I just want to add very quickly, just in response to Councillor Bolton's comments, and I absolutely heed what you're saying. We've actually worked since the draft to change the section on young people to make sure that it's not as punitive in its language and its intention. And I think it's really interesting to note that much of the feedback was actually commending us for being forward-thinking about our acceptance of public artwork and uncommissioned public artwork, and having a new approach to how we address this and commissioning new public artworks, which, in a time gone by would have been considered graffiti. So I think council has actually been really progressive in this aspect, and this strategy is actually trying to put a framework around that and gives acknowledgement and license for more of that work to continue. So I actually think this is a really progressive strategy and actually addresses a number of the concerns you brought up, Councillor Bolton. I think it actually solves them rather than contributes to them.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Carley-Hannon.
Yeah, I just want to quickly agree with Councillor Ratnam on that, because I actually had similar concerns to Councillor Bolton, and I've read this in detail and really do believe that it really does not focus on the punitive side, and it's very supportive of our street art and street art culture that we do have in Moreland. And also I've seen a lot of the graffiti removalists going around and doing a lot of that painting over and things like that, rather than trying to actually attack the people that are doing the work.
Thank you, Councillor Carley-Hannon. If there's no further discussion, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the traffic generation from the East Brunswick Village planning application. Councillor Ratnam.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to propose an alternative recommendation to the one that's in the report, and this has been circulated to councillors. And those alternative recommendations are that, one, that the Brunswick Integrated Transport Strategy identifies and acknowledges the increase in traffic growth that is a result of the increased housing development in the areas and the need for mode shift incentives. Two, that a consultation be conducted with the community about the options for improving cyclist safety and protecting the integrity of the Brunswick Shimmy on John Street, East Brunswick, as outlined in this report, and that the outcomes of this consultation be presented to Council via Council report. Three, that following the consideration of this report, in point 2, Council will determine the type of treatment and budget required to maintain cyclist safety and the integrity of the Brunswick Shimmy on John Street, East Brunswick. And final point 4, that Council receives a detailed report. Council receives detailed reporting annually about the projects and actions that are being completed to improve pedestrian and cyclist safety in the East Brunswick area and areas adjoining the East Brunswick Village. I'm happy to speak to it.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Riley.
Firstly, thanks for the work that's been generated behind this report. Much of the impetus behind this is around the East Brunswick Village development, which is going through a staged process of approvals. And in the recent stage that came before this new council, there was a public meeting that I believe there were over 80 residents that attended who were really concerned about the impact of the East Brunswick Village on their surrounding community, particularly in terms of traffic congestion and safety for pedestrian and cyclists. And one of the significant impacts it's going to have is that the East Brunswick Village will have a new car park exit onto John Street, which is part of the Brunswick Shimmy. So it's a major pedestrian cycling route. And with hundreds more car movements in and out of that, crossing that road and one side of where cyclists use to ride along the Shimmy, I'm really worried that if we just put speed humps, we won't be able to protect the integrity of that Shimmy and cyclists actually won't be safe. I understand that there are some limited options in terms of what we can do, and we might need to consider other areas. I know that's been canvassed as well. But the reason I'm recommending alternative recommendations to the ones in the report is that I think we need the community feedback on this. There are a number of residents who are really concerned in following what's happening. Once again, our bicycle users groups, our peak body groups, users of that Brunswick Shimmy, I feel should have a say in what's going to happen to their shimmy that they use to move around throughout the city. So that's why I'm commending this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Riley, do you wish to add anything further? Thank you. Is there any further councillors who wish to speak on this? No? In that case, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Okay, the next item is public place recycling collection. Councillor Martin?
Thank you. So I would like to move an amendment to the motion, which I haven't sent through. Apologies. It's just a brief sentence at the end of the item number 2, and that is that the report must also address all questions raised in the original NOM 6716 in this report. And if I have a seconder, I'll speak to this item.
Councillor Riley.
Fantastic. So, as many people know, I am extremely passionate about waste, about recycling, about many of the issues that are affecting our environment from that perspective. I'd like to thank the officers for this report. I believe we can go a lot further than what's mentioned here in the report, and hence why I'm supportive of receiving this report in July. I think Council has a huge opportunity to step into the realm where the state government has completely failed to this point in time. And I think it's really important that we look at things like green bins, we look at things that we've raised in this report. Hard waste as well is definitely another issue. Recycling bins in our public places. These are things that residents have been asking for a long time, and I think it's really important that as council, we listen to these residents' concerns and we start implementing and looking to implement some of these things, because the behaviour change is there. We just need to actually put the capital out there and allow people to do this. So I really strongly urge my fellow councillors to support this amendment. And I'll also like to say as well, in particular, at the end of the year, Victoria will be one of 2 states that's yet to ban the plastic bag, and Victoria will be one of 2 states that doesn't have a 10-cent cash for containers recycling scheme. So where we have this huge gap from a state level, as a local government, it's our responsibility to the community to stand up. And so I think this report and I think this NOM will start that process. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Riley?
Yes, I'd just like to add to Councillor Martin's comments, and thank you, Dale, for that. That in terms of state leadership, we're sorely lacking again. Unfortunately, I have to say this twice in one night, but I live and I travel to work just over the south border into Yarra City, where I teach kids. And unfortunately, we've got 2 regimes around, particularly around our recycling regimes. And the kids that go from Moreland go into that city, they learn about recycling in Yarra, and then they have to come home and learn about a different recycling system, and it's not good enough. It's confusing. It's a waste of everyone's time. And if you go into the city of Melbourne, you'll even see that they use different colour bins now. So don't look for a yellow bin to put your recycling in. It's absolutely ridiculous. It's confusing, and we need to get a state government that actually takes leadership on this. And I just want to add that to Dale's Councillor Martin's comments, because it isn't good enough. It's confusing, and it's really up to us to actually step up on this. And unfortunately, it is left to councils to pick up the pieces when we don't really have the resources to do it. And we really do need to lift our game. And unfortunately, while we're waiting for the state government to move, I think we need to actually step up a bit more, please.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Councillor Bood and then Councillor Fran.
This is another one of those moments where we all have our strengths, and I'd like to commend Dale for following this so closely, Councillor Martin, for following this so closely, but also to the officers for this work, because we're only tipping the iceberg and this is just going to keep evolving. There's heaps to do for us to shine in this space. I just want to note that the national broadcaster is running a series at the moment, Liv would have heard me say this today, called The War on Waste, and I think we should get on board and follow suit.
Thank you, Councillor Bood. Councillor Fran?
Thank you, Mayor. Just on the topic of waste, the other day I was in need of a compost bin. I was about to go to Bunnings, and then my mum told me that Hume residents get 70% off compost bins through Compost Revolution. And I quickly logged on and I thought, okay, let's see what Moreland residents get. And we got 25% off. So I wasn't sure what was going on there. So I know the Chief Executive Officer is going to come back to me fairly soon, but that'd be a great initiative that can offer Moreland residents to encourage composting and reduce waste in bins. And hopefully I'll be able to bring that to council. We get another environmental initiative from me. So people are going to think I'm green soon. With all this environment.
Not if you shop at Bunnings. Multinational.
Yep, okay. Thank you, Councillor Fran. Is there any further discussion from councillors? No, in that
I
case,
shop at Bunnings.
I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Okay, next item is the status of the Merlinston Linear Park Upgrade Project and Bridges Avenue Link. On page 239. Councillor Abood?
Yes, I would. What am I doing? Advising to support this, put this motion forward.
Yes. Do you wish? Yep.
I just want to note that. Do I talk to it now?
Well,
Sorry.
we'll get a seconder first.
Yeah, sorry.
Second. So, Councillor Carly Hannon.
It's getting late, isn't it? Okay, I just want to note in this report, I don't have too much more to say about it except that I want to note that the findings note that the people who are objecting to opening up of this lane at the end of Bridges, gate at the end of Bridges Avenue, their fears are unfounded. I think the report has shown that, and that opening up the entrance, if we can manage to do it, actually activates the space rather than making it a situation where unsavoury behaviour can happen. A woman today contacted me because, and this is where that petition came from, because she was involved in an accident with her young child going the long way, and she got really, really enraged, I guess, about wanting it to be resolved because she would probably be one of the first people who walks on a safe route to the school where she can, which is what I sort of identified when I first brought this to the table. And she did point out to me that all of the North East Ward councillors had pledged to support the, the work around more green spaces, and this linear park is one of those things. So I'm glad to have this back, and I'm glad that the outcome has suggested that in fact there is some merit in opening, or no fear, that the fears are unfounded, and I'm looking forward to seeing the whole thing be finished.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Councillor Wood. Councillor Carly Hannon?
Yeah. I suppose the main thing about the Melliston Linear Park project is that if you look along the map, it's just very clear that that's a perfect link, and that in order to ensure the public good for the community, we have to find a way to open this link. It is about access for the primary school as well, for local residents, and similar to the Merri Creek Bridge that we've also up to discussion in the next few months, these are about safe routes for our residents to be able to get their children to school, and that's something that as council we have a responsibility to focus on and to look at all our options for trying to get this to happen. So I commend the work that the community has done, in particular in getting this petition up to show how many people support opening it.
Thank you, Councillor Carly Hannon. Is there any further discussion from councillors? In that case, sorry, Councillor.
Yeah, sorry. Just a quick thing to note. Councillor Kavanagh and I voted to accept the petition earlier. That was not necessarily because we favour that petition to reject the linear park project, but more to allow for that opportunity for the petition to be recognised and the officer in charge to respond. So I'm fairly supportive of this particular motion. Thank you.
Thank you. That was a good clarification. Okay, in that case, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Now, thank you. We have come to 10:30 and I will need an extension of time to continue the meeting. Councillor Abood, seconded by Councillor Ratnam. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. We're getting through this in quite good time, councillors. So we have the Active Moreland Aquatic and Leisure. Councillor Carly Hannon's on her feet.
Second time as well?
No. Yeah, and Councillor Kavanagh.
Okay.
Second.
Yes, I'd like to start by thanking the council officers who did all this work and had a look at all the options for us on the fees and charges, particularly Kristen and Kim. And I also want to say that the concession price that we as a council provide is excellent and really helpful to the community, and it's something that I benefited from as a teenager as well, in being able to access my local leisure centre. The leisure centres are also a place that employs many young people from the local community as swimming teachers, as lifeguards, as gym instructors, and I think it's really great that we have got so many leisure centres, and we are really providing such a service that helps everyone in our community. The other thing that we have actually done with this Rose is to extend the length of time at both Brunswick and Coburg. Is there other leisure centres as well? Just Brunswick and Coburg? Yeah. Oh, just Brunswick at the moment. And I think this will be excellent for employment and also for access to the service. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carney. Councillor Kavanagh?
Yes, just to say that's right. That's one thing we're doing. We're also introducing off-peak memberships, which I think will be very popular for many people. And if you look at the financial implications, it comes to $149,000 to trial till April next year. That's assuming that we don't get one extra customer in that extended periods, one extra person who takes up the option of limited membership, off-peak membership when they didn't previously have limit membership. Also, we're reducing the casual fees for use of the gym. So I actually think when we come back in April next year, I predict that we're going to find that it's almost been cost neutral. I really believe that we're going to have a lot more people joining an off-peak membership, coming at that later time, and also using the casual gym. So I'll be interested to see what it actually ends up at.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Abood?
Yeah, very quickly, I just want to reiterate what Councillor Kavanagh said, specifically around the off-peak membership reductions. Sorry, I'm getting a bit confused by this, it's getting late. I just really support this motion. I think that we're going to see some great movement in all of the stuff that we bring to the table in terms of reinventing the aquatic systems in this city, and I think this is a great start towards that.
Thank you, Councillor Abood. Is there any further discussion? Councillor
Just briefly as well, just to echo my support, and I'm actually quite excited about having the Brunswick facility open later. I know that we struggle sometimes to compete with other gyms because they are open a little bit later, and a lot of people work and go to the gym after work. So I think that one additional hour, Councillor Kavanagh is absolutely right, might actually result in significant amount of more patronage and more membership.
Yeah.
And it's not every day we get to expand the service that we offer to the community. So I think it's great for this council to be able to trial this, and if successful, even look at increasing some of the other centres later, and even going even later into the future, because I know the community now is doesn't have a lot of time on their hands, and they're looking for facilities that are open later. So I think this is a good way for this council to go.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. If there's no further discussion, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Now, councillors, we're on to our notice of motion this evening. So we'll start with Councillor Kavanagh, the State Government Public Housing Redevelopment, and Councillor Ratnam to second.
I have a different one that's resolutions, the one that's printed on the agenda, and I'll read that for the benefit of the public gallery. Council resolves to 1, acknowledge and thank the Department of Health and Human Services for their briefing of councillors on April 24th and their subsequent letter to council dated May 1st. In particular, we acknowledge that Gron Place is in need of renovation to improve conditions for its residents. 2, we advocate that A, the state government replace all public housing currently at Gron Place and add at least 50% more public housing on the site. B, the entire site remain for public housing only. C, genuine consultation takes place with the residents of Gron Place, the local community and Moreland City Council. 4, any redevelopment of the site be sensitive to the residential zoning of the site. And E, all dwellings at Gron Place to have at least 7.5 star energy rating. And point 3, write to the state members of Pascoe Vale and Brunswick and the upper house members representing Northern Metropolitan Region outlining council's position and seeking a meeting to advocate for better outcomes for both current public housing tenants and for those who are on public housing waiting lists. And if I have a second, I'd like to speak to that.
I think Councillor Ratnam has already seconded. Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh.
Actually, I'll reserve my right to speak to close the debate, actually.
Thank you. Councillor, do you wish to?
Absolutely. I absolutely commend this motion, and I think it's really imperative for council to state its position as early as possible and at the outset. There have been similar projects that the state government is embarking on, and we welcome the renewal of public housing stock. A lot of those dwellings are falling into disrepair, and we recognise the urgency of renewing the public housing stock. However, the concern is, based on the projects that have gone to date, there's one in Ashburton which is a similar size. What we've seen is a dilution of public housing and a replacement of public housing with social housing, and on top of that, 2 times the amount of private dwellings on the same site. And when we're facing lists of thousands of people on the public housing waiting list, I think it's about 30,000. 35,000 people on the housing list. I don't think we can afford to reduce our public housing stock by even one house. We should be adding more to that. And this resolution asks for a full reinstatement of the public housing on that site, because we know that the public housing is needed. 35,000 people are waiting for that public housing. We're asking for more public housing on that site. We're asking for genuine consultation, and we don't want to see what's happened in similar neighbourhoods in other local government areas where the local council and community haven't been consulted well, and the projects have not met the community's needs, let alone the needs which are the most important of those tenants of those public housing areas. So we ask the state government to take urgent consideration of this and deliver an outcome that's actually going to look after the people who need the housing, the public housing the most.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Bolton.
I think this is a really important motion, especially as in the recent state budget, the state government transferred thousands of public housing units to housing associations. And when public tenants shift from public housing to housing association housing, they lose their security, they lose a lot of their rights. Including that if you lose your job, your rent goes down to a percentage of your income, which in public housing, you know, because people are moving in and out of jobs all the time, if you lose your job, your rent goes down to a percentage of your income. If you get work again, then it goes up again. I think this is really important, especially when we've got such a housing shortage, and also because housing association housing does not house very many people on vulnerable incomes. Housing association housing, under the name of social housing, houses very few people on New Start or youth allowance and so forth. So it's not actually the solution to more affordable housing. So I think I'm very pleased that Councillor Kavanagh is advocating this motion that this site be entirely for public housing, and I think that's our way that needs to be the way in which we deal with a housing affordability crisis in Australia. You know, things like just extra first home buyers bonuses and the new bonus in the federal budget. I mean, all of those sort of schemes, all they achieve is the price of houses goes up by the amount that the first home buyers grant goes up, or that'll be with this superannuation, people being able to access the superannuation, it'll be the same thing. So it doesn't address housing affordability. This is something which does address housing affordability.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Is there any further discussion from councillors? Councillor Carney.
I guess my biggest concern here is I want that Grand Place housing stock redeveloped for those residents as soon as possible, because it's pretty poor conditions that they're having to live in. It's unacceptable, really, that those are the conditions that we as a society are willing to put pretty vulnerable people in. Look, I asked the question at a briefing session on Monday, would supporting a motion such as this compromise the speed in which we were to redevelop that particular site for those residents, and I was comfortable that the directors responded accordingly and said no, and there was a compromise reached where some of the language was toned down. The most important thing is the people in Grand Place. We really need to fix the conditions that they're living in as soon as possible. The state government gets, I disagree with a lot of what the state government does, but what I do really like is, for example, the way they're rolling out the rail removal projects at quite quick pace. So when the Department of Health and Human Services came forward and said they have a way of doing things in terms of utilising private sector investment to speed up and make the projects more feasible, to hopefully roll more of these projects out and provide more public housing stock, then to me it makes a lot of sense. But on this occasion, I'm happy to back in John with this particular motion, given that the director's advice is that it's not going to compromise the importance that they've placed on redeveloping Grand Place.
Thank you, Councillor Franny. Is there any further discussion? Councillor Tapanos.
Yeah. I'd like to start by congratulating the state government on this initiative. It is great to be able to get some money from public housing and to renew this stock, and consecutive governments have failed to invest in public housing, so it's great that we have a state government that is starting to address the issue. I do agree with Councillor Farnley, and I'm just trying to find it on my... I think that is... I think it's going to move, but you could have a look at Grand Place on your iPads, and I'm not sure if you can see it there, but it is pretty run down. It is pretty run down. I mean, I have a look at it, and it really looks like a development that was probably done in the early parts of the 60s. It doesn't look like anything that you would consider livable in the 21st century in a modern suburb like Brunswick. My biggest priority is to get the renewal of this housing stock completed. And I think that is probably the number one priority for the state and the people that are affected by this. And I'm wondering, before we start putting in proposals wanting 6.5 star, green star, and the whole thing to be kept for public housing, we need to have a sense of reality of what the state government is trying to do and the challenge that they have, which is to renew thousands and thousands of public housing stock that was built in the 60s and 70s. And I think that if they've come up with a project that actually starts addressing the issue, but unfortunately they have to build some private development. Unfortunately, they can't deliver the world's most sustainable, the world's most sustainable green energy village, then they might just have to be secondary priorities to actually getting the housing stock done, and done as soon as possible, so we can improve the living conditions and the standards of these dwellings. So I think we need to look at it from that perspective and understand the challenge and the financial challenge of our counterparts in the state government, and actually acknowledge that some really good work is being done and the issue starting to be addressed. This is we want everything, and we wish we could have everything motion, and it might sound great on paper, but I just don't think it's realistic considering where the priorities are. And before we even start sending these letters and submissions, I would actually like us to consult some of the residents that actually live there. I mean, what is it that is most important to them? Is it that they have, 7.5 star energy rating? Or is it that they actually have an upgrade to their building? Sure, we hope they could have both, but I just don't think there's enough money to do it.
Thank you. Councillor Riley.
Got to stand up after that. For over 20 years, we've had federal government's lack of investment in public housing, Councillor Tapanos, and we wouldn't be doing this, your state government wouldn't be doing half measures like this our state government wouldn't be doing this if we'd had leadership from the federal sphere. It's successive federal governments on both colours have led to this. It's a disaster, and you can have a look at the homelessness that's in our city now, which is a consequence. I seriously believe it's a consequence of that. And I have to say, if you want to talk about 7.5 stars, they deserve every star they get, those residents, because the higher the rating, the cheaper their bills, yes. Councillor Tapanos. And I could go on, but I'll leave it at that.
Okay, Councillor Martin.
Following on from that as well, I mean, I second everything that Councillor Riley has just said. We need every single building in the entire municipality to improve in energy rating. I mean, we have electricity prices going up probably another 15% this year. We've got gas prices that are going up record levels right across the state. And these are going to be costs that the tenants are going to have to pay. And we need to realise that we're going into a situation in the future where we're going to have energy poverty, where people who are not going to be able to turn on their air conditioner because they can't afford it. And so we need to make sure that these buildings are the highest energy quality going forward. I mean, I've heard of stories if Department of Health and Human Services buildings where people can't even open their windows, outside ambient temperatures in the low 20s and inside in the 30s. I mean, people have to live in these houses. And at the moment, the stock that's being built is absolutely substandard. And I think we really need to advocate that we need 7.5 star or higher. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Bood.
I just want to look at it also from the other perspective, which is along the lines of, if you did ask them what they would be happy with, they would be happy with just a roof over their head, because that is the culture around public housing. The culture around public housing is it's some kind of a free gift that you get and you've just got to be happy with whatever it is. We've got situations in this city where we've got developments being built that are of a much lower Energy Star rating, and if we don't feed this into this work, looking for a higher standard, not only is it going to stay what we see all the time with all of the applications, but it's definitely going to be something that people who are meant to be feeling like they're getting handed a free thing are not going to say, well, hang on a sec, we want to embrace renewable energies, we want to do something better.
Thank you, Councillor Bood. Is there any further? Councillor Carly-Hannon.
I need to speak, but I'm not sure what I want to say. Okay, so I will be supporting this motion. I agree with Councillor Kavanagh, and we've spoken many times before around the fact that it is, government's responsibility to residents to provide housing and to ensure that everybody has a roof over their head. I agree that there has not been enough done from federal and state governments, and I'm concerned that now a lot of that burden is coming, down to everyone in the community and now coming to council level as well. Having thought a lot, I do support the idea that moving forward, council does need to be involved in public housing trusts and things like this to ensure that every level of government is working towards what is now a national crisis. And I also recognise that I do want to commend the work that is being done by the Department of Health and Human Services, because the reality is that public housing is not a popular policy to put up. I mean, we saw the federal budget last night, and to see the easy attacks on welfare recipients. And my concern is that, it is important that we don't look at the political parties in this, but we look at everyone that supports the importance of having public housing and allowing everyone to have a home to live in. So my view is that we should definitely be encouraging all kinds of support to help developments. And so I do support the work by the Department for Grand Place, but at the same time, would I want more? Like, could it be better? The answer is yes. So that's my position.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, Councillor Kavanagh.
No, he's spoken already.
You've already spoken.
I reserve my right to speak to close the debate because I thought the debate might be interesting and provide with a little bit of ammunition, for want of a better term, and it's certainly done that in abundance. So congratulations, councillors. I suppose my overriding feeling is I noticed that one term, and I'm not individualising councillors, but the term unrealistic. This is unrealistic. I want to know why was it not unrealistic in the 1940s and the 50s and the 60s when Grand Place was originally built? When Grand Place was originally built, there was no thought of having private ownership. There was no thought of mixing up, because I'm going to tell you why it was realistic, because the government was committed to doing things that were their core business. The government was committed to providing health, housing, transport, public safety, and education. They were committed to doing that. Now we have governments that decide that building national tennis centres is more important than building public housing. We've got governments with different priorities. We weren't any wealthier in the 40s and 50s when my grandfather was the housing minister. We weren't. But we built thousands of homes for people after World War II because we had priorities that were the right priorities. We said that government is for looking after its core business, not other things. Government looked after that. We're wealthier now, but unfortunately our priorities have been taken differently. If you put up 50 years ago that a place should be public housing, people would have said, of course it should be. It wasn't unrealistic. That's how it should be. This is where we've gone so far away from where we should be at. And yes, I'm happy to be on council and support social housing, but we shouldn't have to. It is the state government responsibility, and not just this state government, successive state governments for probably 30 years have an underinvestment, and now we've got 35,000 people on the waiting list. Not only that, the people who can't find public housing then go and sleep out at Flinders Street Station, and we're told, oh, that's not good for our overseas visitors who are visiting the tennis centre in January because the government supported the tennis centre and built a beautiful facility. It's rubbish. I'm sorry, it's rubbish. Now, as far as this particular thing goes, we're saying, we've been briefed in April, we're saying as quickly and as firmly as we can, this is our vision, this is what we see, this is what we want to see take place. No ambiguity, no rubbish, this is what we want. Yes, it's a hard advocacy. I mean, someone mentioned it shouldn't be a political thing. I agree. That's why I put the Northern Metropolitan Region upper house members. I think Fiona Patton from the Sex Party could be a really important person in this game, in advocating for this. I don't care what the political persuasion is. I want people who are committed to enforcing this vision.
Okay, councillors, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that
Can we have
carried.
a division, please?
And a division has been called? So, yes?
Agreed such a thing?
Everyone say for councillors. Okay. Now, I think this might be the last note. We've got two more notice of motion left. So the next one is Councillor Bolton's acknowledgement of the legacy of Coburg athlete Peter Norman.
So this motion is that Council acknowledges the extraordinary achievements of Coburg athlete Peter Norman. Council write to Mr Norman's family to convey its appreciation of his inspirational role. Copies of this letter to be sent to local and federal and state parliamentarians and the Australian Olympic Committee. Request officers to liaise with Mr Norman's family to consider an appropriate way to acknowledge his important work, possibly the naming of a street or location. And fourth, that Council receive a report on the commemoration in due course.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Is there a seconder? Councillors, is there a seconder for Councillor Bolton's motion?
Want me to say who he is?
Yes, Dale, do you want to ask?
Can I just ask you a question? Do we know for certain that he was a Coburg resident? Because I know Wikipedia says that he was born in Coburg, but do we know that he was a Coburg resident? Because we've heard reports that he might have been a Williamstown resident.
Later on, he lived in Williamstown.
Okay.
All right. Do we have a seconder?
Yeah, I'm happy to second.
Councillor Curran. Councillor Bolton.
Possibly I should have put some of the information about Peter Norman in the actual motion itself, because a lot of people probably don't know who Peter Norman is. Peter Norman was an athlete in the 1968 Olympic Games in Mexico. He was the third third person in an iconic photo when sprinters John Carlos and Tommy Smith raised black gloved fists in the air on the podium in a brave stance for black rights at the Mexico Olympics in 1968. Peter Norman was a silver medalist at the time, and he fully supported the African American athletes and also wore an Olympic Project for Human Rights badge on the podium. This was still the period of the White Australia policy of Aboriginal children being removed and people being tested on language skills when they entered Australia. Peter Norman was shamefully excluded from a lot of the history books on his return to Australia. He qualified for the 1972 Olympics but wasn't chosen for the Olympics, and he was not recognised at the 2000 Olympics when all other Australian Olympians were acknowledged, and he was really treated very shamefully by the Australian Olympic Committee. In 2012, the Federal Parliament passed a motion apologising to Peter Norman and recognising his stance. He was quite a very moral man, and he felt, even despite the treatment he received on his return to Australia, he felt that what he'd done of supporting the African American athletes was an important thing to do despite his treatment on his return.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Kavanagh?
Yeah. The only thing I want to clarify that we was from Coburg, that's fine. All other aspects I agree entirely. I think he's a fine man. I think one thing that you could say that shows what a man he was that at his death, both John Carlos and Tommy Smith flew out for his funeral and were pallbearers at his funeral. Considering they simply stood on a stand with him 45 years previous, also shows that, you know, the enduring friendship that they did develop. And he's a very humble man, had a service station in Williamstown, I'm aware of, and, you know, I think it would be a fitting thing.
Thank you, Councillor Kavanagh. Councillor Tapper.
Yeah, also rise to support, and I do think it's acknowledged, it's important that this council and the broader community does acknowledge these acts, and unfortunately this one's taken a long time for the community and I guess the federal parliament as well to acknowledge it. It certainly is difficult to imagine what the circumstances would have been like back then, and the culture, the politics of the time, and to actually stand up in solidarity at the podium was quite a courageous act, and no doubt he paid some price for that in later years. So I think that those courageous acts do need to be acknowledged, and we do need to look back on that now and take some pride in the stance that he did take, because whilst he's up there, he's representing our country, he's representing Australia as an athlete, and he's also demonstrating some of the values that he had certainly, and I like to think that most Australians did at that time. So it's great that he was a local and he spent some time here, and he certainly lived in other parts of the state as well. But I think that we need to acknowledge that what he did through his actions and showing that solidarity was of not just a national but an international significance. And I think that goes sometimes without being said. So I think that we could have a look at a whole series of actions that we could take from here, whether it's naming something after him or whether it's trying to get his story further out to the broader community. I think that we could play a leading role in that, and I'd like to see this council commit to doing that.
Thank you, Councillor Tapanos. Is there any further discussion from councillors? Councillor Bolton.
Just one brief thing, extra point in the closing of the debate, is that Peter Norman's role is recognised more overseas than in Australia, in the sense that the US Athletics Association has declared the 9th of October Peter Norman Day. And there is a group of people in Melbourne who've been campaigning for Peter Norman to get recognition. There was a film made about him called Salute, which was made by his nephew, because, you know, I mean, Peter Norman wasn't necessarily asking for recognition, but there has been a group of people who've campaigned to try and make sure that he does get recognition. He was excluded from the history books for taking an anti-racism stance, and it's quite shameful really that he was recognised in the United States but not by our own Australian Olympics Federation, where people, CEOs are paid over $700,000 a year.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Riley.
Sorry, I'm just voting for.
Right. Okay, right. So I'm guessing that we'll call the vote now. So
The starter's gun.
Yeah. All right. Councillors, if there's no further debate, we'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Now, councillors will need to request an extension of time because we are at 11 o'clock. Councillor Abood and Councillor Riley to second. All those in favour? All those against? Okay, yes,
we're getting numbers.
getting close. All right, I
Getting
declare that
closer.
carried. Sorry, Councillor Riley, just as a point of clarification, when the division was called at the last, on the last motion, we didn't put our hands up again the second time.
Public housing.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
public
yeah.
housing. So I'm not sure for the purpose of clarification for note keeping if we need to do that again.
I think you need to do it immediately after the vote is put. We've moved on now.
The division was recorded as you voting against Councillor Tapanos. It was recorded in the minutes. Yes, it was.
Well, that would be
There's
nice.
only one
It was
against.
the original
so
vote. It was the
there
original
no
vote was
need
counted
to
as the
show
division.
hands again.
Yeah, it was that was recorded. It's fine. Okay, that stands.
So just through the mayor, I mean, this is a choice about how you want to. I mean, we have recorded it as a division. We would normally enact it as a division so that it is also happens in the chamber. I think through the mayor, I guess you've got a choice as the chair as to whether you would like to redo it again or not, and I mean, get some advice, I guess, from the rest of the councillors.
I actually don't think you can redo it because it's got to be done immediately after the vote. I'm happy for my vote against to be noted in the minutes, but the minutes are a reflection of what occurs in the chamber, and it is fact that a division did not occur. It wasn't put to the vote again. And I noted this, but we had moved on. I tried to get your attention. I'm sorry. But yeah, I think if you have a look at the video, you'll notice that a secondary vote did not take place. And the minutes, unfortunately, do need to be an accurate reflection of what occurs in the chamber.
Yeah. But given that the division was called procedurally, we did call for a division. We can exercise that division now. Nothing says that you can't enact the procedure has to happen immediately after the motion. The procedure did happen because there was a call by a councillor for a division. We can exercise that vote again.
I think it's too late to exercise the vote now. I think maybe.
I just think it sets a dangerous precedent.
Well, as the mover of the division, I call for a division, and we haven't enacted that. So I believe that we should.
A division is not a motion to be moved. It's a request for
it's a procedural motion.
No, it's not a procedural motion.
So I think again I'm going to defer to the mayor as the chair for tonight. And you can suspend standing orders to do. You often do those things. You do suspend standing orders to enable something to occur. If you would like to do a division again, and there's a concern about whether you are allowed to do it or not, then suspend standing orders, do your division, and then you can continue. But as the chair, I think the mayor really is in a position to determine.
Move that we suspend standing orders.
Let's make a move on that. Let's vote on that. I think.
Councillor Bolton.
I actually support Councillor Ratnam in this because many other times we've had a call for a division when there's only been one against, and we have accepted that as being, we haven't gone through the process of putting our hands up again because it's very clear it's only one against. So this is has been a common practice on Moreland Council. So I mean,
I'm sorry, just a point of order. What are we debating? I mean, there's no motion on the table.
Councillor Riley has moved
I think that.
Councillor Riley has moved a procedural motion to suspend standing orders.
Yeah.
Okay.
And we don't vote on.
That's just a suspension of the rules.
Yes, we have to vote on the You're suspending standing orders, and then you basically go ahead into your calling for your division.
Okay. So, as a chair, I'll call for the division again to make it clear, and we will be suspending standing orders at this point. So, councillors?
So, what are we doing?
We're at the public housing. We're returning to that just for purpose of clarification for the record keeping and to keep in line with.
No, I didn't.
Yep.
Raise a point of order.
Well, we're spending a lot of time on it.
Okay,
So can we just move on, please?
All right.
Yeah, let's move on.
Yeah,
So, all those in. This is the public housing motion. All those in favour? All those against? All right.
Okay. Would you now like to call?
there will be one difference because Councillor Yildiz has left the chamber.
Exactly, so
and he
this is
actually
out of order.
voted.
No, he's
No,
out of order.
he'd left.
He had already left.
Still
He wasn't here
Oh,
at
had he
that
left
time.
already? Okay.
I suggest that we have a discussion about standing orders because people clearly don't know what things are. But can we please move on?
Just declare that as a division.
Okay, so that is the division?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Right. Now, the next item on the agenda is Councillor Riley's reduced tram service for Moreland on page 331.
We don't need to resume. We're just going back into the meeting. Right. Thank you. My motion's been circulated. I haven't changed it. I do want to just speak to the fact that I very much appreciate that the... Yes, I can have a seconder and I'll speak to it, sorry.
I'll second it.
Councillor Carney.
I do want to acknowledge that the state government's increased the capacity of these trams. It's really important. And that's an improvement that I think this council's been advocating for a long time. The concern I have, and which is raised here, is that there has been other impacts in terms of the frequency, and I really would like to see the frequency increased, not reduced in any way. And that's what the intent of this motion is, to see that we actually advocate for increased services as well as increased capacity. And I think we should be able to do both in this modern day and age. I won't speak any further to it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor...
oh, sorry.
That's all right. Councillor Franny and then Councillor Bolton.
I'll reserve the right.
Thank you. Councillor Bolton.
I just want to move an amendment which doesn't change the sense of the motion at all, but it's just stating something a bit more firmly, and that is to amend B to say opposes the reduction in service frequencies on routes 58, 19 and 96, and calls for the frequency to be reinstated. So it expresses deep concern as sort of like a bit weak, I think. I just think we need to state strongly we want this decision reversed. So that's the intention of my amendment.
Well, sorry, Councillor Bolton, I think if you read point C, point D, they actually do what you're actually asking to do. So I think it's been well prepared.
Okay, so that hasn't been accepted. Councillor Bolton, do you wish to have that as an alternate and continue?
Oh, no, it's not big enough change to... I just think it's a bit limp as it is stated.
Well,
that's all.
okay, let's return if you're not going to propose that as an alternate. So, Councillor Riley, do you wish to speak? Oh, you've already spoken. Are there any further speakers? Councillor Ratnam.
I'd like to commend this motion, and I strongly support this motion. For a public transport system that we need for the future, it has to be fast, frequent and reliable. I've heard arguments that these changes are about increasing capacity despite reducing the frequency of services. And I don't think you can achieve the type of whole-scale change we need in terms of transport. We're getting to crunch points. Many of those crunch points are around moorland. And by reducing the frequency, you change people's behaviour because people can't rely on their public transport. On the Upfield line, we have 3 services an hour in peak time, and it's filled to capacity. If you miss that train and you're on your way to work, you have to think about, if I miss that train, will I be able to get to work on time? And that might change your behaviour and go, well, I'll take the car because I'm within minutes of missing my train, as opposed to thinking there'll be another train in 5 to 10 minutes and I can get to work on time or wherever I need to go to on time. We need to be increasing the frequency, not decreasing the frequency. We should be increasing the capacity, but we can do both. We have the capacity, we have the resources. There's billions of dollars for new road projects, but there don't seem to be billions of dollars for new public transport. And this is why we're raising our voice, because we need to see these changes reversed.
Thank you, Councillor Ratnam. Councillor Bolton?
I will speak to the motion now that the amendment's gone. I actually don't think this is an intended improvement at all, and it reminds me very much of something which happened when I used to be a bus driver and articulated buses were introduced, because what happens is they introduce longer trams with less drivers. Because you don't have to employ as many drivers when you reduce the frequency and just have longer vehicles. And actually what you need, you probably need both, actually. And it's really an attack on the workforce as well as an attack on the frequency. And there's a real need, in addition to increased frequencies in the daytime, to actually have increased frequency at night, because there's a big disincentive to catching public transport at night, even in supposedly wonderful public transport friendly moorland, because say if you're coming from Northcote to Moreland,
It might only be a 10-minute journey by car, but you have, by the time you catch the tram into the city, then wait for the tram out or train out, it ends up being an hour or an hour and a half trip. So there's a real need to increase the frequency, and I think it's really a bit of gilding the lily, saying they're improving the service. Obviously, the disability access is a good thing, but I think it's really gilding the lily to say that they're intending to improve the service.
Thank you, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Tapanos.
Thank you. I think sometimes we've got to be careful in our advocacy campaign to also acknowledge good as far as, and acknowledge the good things that have occurred here as well. So I think sometimes we do create these letters, we send off letters to ministers without once more actually consulting some of the users and residents to see what they think. There's significant benefit in the proposal to actually improve the carriages and have more capacity in the carriages, the extensions. I live on the new 58 line, and I can tell you that the residents around there think it's an absolute fantastic service, and they're really, really pleased with the changes that have occurred, and that's what I'm hearing, and that is certainly my view. As a frequent user of that tram, I was able to take it all the way to Toorak just the other day. So I actually think that the changes are fantastic. I do think it's a little bit disappointing, but some of the services had to decrease in frequency, but it's offset. It's offset with better carriages, larger carriages. Perhaps the capacity has increased. I don't know that. But I could tell you what, the community is saying that, particularly on the 58, the fact that the line has now been extended and you're able to travel further on the same tram line, that is a great positive. So I do think that sometimes we're awfully quick to have a go at the state government, and I've seen that a number of times today. You know, they invest almost $2.7 billion in public housing, probably the first time a state government has done that since John's grandfather or great uncle, but they get a slap on the wrist. They're investing in public transport, increasing lines, increasing carriages. They get a slap on the wrist for cutting some of the frequency. So I think a good advocacy campaign acknowledges the positives that occur and also asks for more. And quite often I sense that this council is quick to just be negative. And I'm not sure whether that's because, you know, people are intending to run in state campaigns or federal campaigns in the future. I'm not sure. I'm just, you know, it could be a whole range of things, but I do think that we should consult residents, get the views of the people who use the services, and then write letters, as opposed to just having a swipe with political opponents. I think that would be something that our residents would like to see more of. Thank you.
Councillor Riley.
We ready? Unless someone else wishes to speak, I wish to close.
I just wouldn't mind stating that I actually was standing out at the tram stop over there the other night, catching the number 19 tram after one of our council briefings. And I stood there and about 7 or 8 people all rocked up, and we're all standing on the tram stop, and everyone was looking at each other going, where the hell is the tram? And I don't know if whether or not the communication has been incredibly poor around the timetable changes, but there were so many people standing around, and we had actually had a great conversation waiting for the tram, wondering where the hell it was. Ended up waiting there for 25 minutes. You know, and there's people. You cut frequency of services at night when people shouldn't be standing around waiting for the tram. People should be getting on the tram and going home. But people don't have hours to stand around at night and wait for these things. So I think we should advocate for this, and I think they should improve the frequency. And yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Martin.
Thanks. Sorry. Look, just quickly, I didn't want to speak too long to this, but I do wish to actually say that they've just opened a new tram service for people to get access to some of the hospitals in the northern side of the city. The disability access with the easy access stops. And in fact, they weren't even properly installed. So people couldn't even get off and on the tram in the right places. And it's a complete embarrassment to the planning that went into this. They announced it as being whiz-bang, and then people can't even get to the hospitals that they intended to go to. So I don't have great faith in the planners that they get this stuff right. It was a feature in the Age just 2 weeks ago. And I think it was actually tram route 55, 58 that we're talking about. We do want to, I think this motion is talking about doing more than just frequency. We want to get a 24/7 public system. We want to get much better access to people in the north parts of our city. I could go on and on about what we want for our city, but I really think that these simple changes, simple as in greater capacity, less frequency, is an issue. And I do think that we need to, as a council, actually get better around what we want to advocate for the rest of the city, because I want us to actually do some more investment in actually getting more buses connecting to our trams and trains. One, so that we can actually rely less on our car and make that transition into, a more livable city. So I really want us to spend some money on the advocacy, get some postcards out there, placards going out there, and actually getting some of the information out to our constituents about what the problems are and getting them to join us in approaching our members of parliament to actually get a much better public transport system, not just in Moreland, but across the whole of Melbourne and Victoria.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, sorry, I was going to speak before he closed it.
Oh, sorry,
I
Ali.
was a second.
He's closed it now. You can't.
Oh, right. Yep.
Sorry, Ali, I didn't realise.
No,
Let's go.
okay. Sorry. Okay.
We're over time.
I know, it's getting quite late, Councillor. So I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried unanimously. Thank you. Okay. Now. Oh, no general business. Yeah. We've still got general business to go, councillors. So the first one is from Councillor Martin in relation to the speed limit around Morris Reserve.
Thank you, councillors. This one is pretty straightforward. It's a bit of a no-brainer. And I'm sure a lot of you have been in touch with residents from around Morris Reserve, around that area. There's been huge number of reports of traffic instances, of mirrors being smashed off, of people speeding, particularly around a kindergarten on Brentwood Avenue. And so I think that...
Can I ask for a second? Councillor Kavanagh, a second. Go on, Councillor Martin.
Thank you. So instances of speeding around this kindergarten, and I think that a lot of the residents that I've spoken to have indicated that they would welcome a reduction in the speed limit, and they would also welcome signs in the area informing people who are passing through between Reynard and Moreland Road that it is a 40-kilometre area. So this is just calling for a report to highlight the feasibility and the steps to move to a 40-kilometre zone, and also highlighting that there should be signage in there as well.
Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Kavanagh?
No, that's fine. Yep.
Is there any further discussion from councillors? In that case, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried. Now, the next general business item is from Councillor Abood on the Merlinson Station car park.
Just that the council resolves to write a letter to the responsible body, and I could have probably checked that, but I didn't. I think it's Vic Track, yeah. And request that the car parks on either side of Merlinson train station have an upgrade, including a bicycle cage.
Great. Is there a seconder? Councillor Riley. Is there any further discussion?
Yeah, I don't think I need to say too much about it, just that it's in a pretty shabby state, and it needs fixing.
Thank you. Councillor
We
Riley.
sent this letter in the last council too. So sorry. Maybe they'll accumulate.
No.
Good.
Okay, Councillor Riley, do you wish to add anything?
Probably every
No?
council.
Okay. Is
Probably
there-
hasn't arrived yet. With Australia's postcard.
So probably every council
Settle
sends
down.
this letter about this.
Let's go. Come on.
Sorry.
All right, let's get back on track, council. So if there's no further discussion, I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? I declare that carried.
It's not meant to discourage you though.
The next one is from Councillor Bolton.
Okay, this is, it's slightly different to how it came around, but I think everyone saw the final version. The council write to Vic Roads to investigate the street lighting levels in the vicinity of the IGA supermarket on Nicholson Street, Coburg. To request Vic Roads, if the street lighting levels are not to Australian standard, that they undertake works to achieve the required lighting levels. And if I have a second, I'll explain
Councillor
why.
Abood, did you wish to second? Yes? Okay, Councillor Bolton.
This is really a further step beyond the motion that I moved in, I think it was December last year, after a female was killed outside that supermarket. In my original motion, I was mostly focused on all the traffic issues and pedestrian safety, etc. But this year, a resident has contacted me to say that one of the big issues is that it is very dark at night, and I think that was the time when this pedestrian was knocked by a car and killed. And of course, a lot of people actually do park on the other side of the road, or somewhat pedestrians as well, and run across the road, and it's dark because the supermarket's open till late, so people are going late. So it's really to the final part of the motion. One of the resident who approached me about this said that actually the streetlight poles are already there, waiting for streetlights to be installed. Well, she thinks that's what their purpose is. I think it's really important to carry this out
Thank
if
you,
possible.
Councillor Bolton. Councillor Boo?
Yes, just very quickly, a question about whether we can request them to, like, we just ask the question, or like, can we do the second part?
Yes.
Okay. Councillor Riley?
Sorry, I just wanted to add that I understand with some of the work that has been happening, Councillor Bolton, in that space, that the recommendation from Vic Roads is that they do install a pedestrian crossing. However, they haven't funded it. So I think now, rather than suggest we write another letter, that I actually think amongst ourselves and where we can with our local MPs, we should be asking them to actually advocate that get installed and get funded at ASAP. And whether we want to actually take it on as a broader advocacy issue, we can put that into our advocacy kit and think a bit more about where it sits, because I do think we are being a bit piecemeal about it at the moment. We need to, I think, get a bit more overarching about what our priorities are, so we're not asking too many things too often, and we actually do it in a strategic way. That's just wanted to throw that in.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Councillor Rapp?
I just would like to add to that, following that comment, and it's potentially a question. I came past that area subsequent to hearing Red's motion and had a look at that area as well. My understanding is I don't think they're LED lights yet. So if it's Vic Roads and they haven't done the changeover of lights, it feels like they're the old yellow kind of pinkish lights, not the LED lights. Perhaps one of the solutions is that they change the LED lights, because that gives you much more brightness. Also, it seems like the lights are on one side of the road, and it's what happens up that Nicholson Home Street stretch. So I'm not sure about the possibility of lighting up the other side, because it looks like the practice is you light up the one side, but it might be about the brightness of the lights. Just in terms of Councillor O'Reilly's point, in terms of the broader advocacy, I wonder whether we should suggest that this is part of the broader advocacy that we do around the safety of that intersection, including asking Vic Roads if they want to do a bulk light changeover, and that we can pass on the information and learnings that we've had from our bulk light changeover, and perhaps accelerate that project, because that actually might address a number of issues, which is changing over all their light bulb stock, plus increasing the brightness in that area. So I just think that we might want to reword this to be part of the package and strengthen it by adding a number of things.
Councillor Bolton?
In the light of Councillor Riley's comments, I think it would be good to add a point 3 Point 3, to note to Vic Roads that improvements in street lighting at this location is part of Council's advocacy around pedestrian safety at this location. I mean, we could say something about the LED, but I think that's sort of like a bigger, if you feel it needs to be added in, I mean, it's just, I think we've got to get them to acknowledge that the street lighting's inadequate in the area.
Can I just flag that I'd like to withdraw the second, because it's getting more and more chaotic, and I think...
So Councillor Ratnam, I think...
I was going to suggest that, can we hold this over to the next meeting and word it properly?
Yeah, that's why I want to
withdraw
the second.
motion, perhaps, just in terms of getting it right, so that we are clear with our
Taking up
advocacy.
the type of lighting as well.
Yeah, adding to the motion, being part
And
of the
asking
package.
them to follow through on their agreement to put in.
I think we'll get a better motion if we do that.
I wasn't actually aware that they had, which is probably, I've not looked at something properly, but I
Okay,
wasn't
so
aware
right now
that.
she needs a seconder. Back to.
Okay, so Councillor Bolton, do you wish to go ahead with this now, or do you wish to withdraw it, or
Just withdraw it.
lay it on the table?
Well, I sort of feel as if that's, I mean, you know, we've had other motions that have happened tonight where everyone's chipped in with little words and so on and so forth. I mean, it would be good to get this on the road. I mean, they didn't. Not the lights, not the lights.
Well, I'd like to move a procedural motion that we lay this on the table.
Okay, so there is a procedural motion. All those in favour? All those against? I declare that carried. Okay. So thank you, councillors. Now that concludes the end of general business items, and we then move into the confidential part of the meeting. So councillors, do I have a motion to close the meeting to the public? Councillor Riley, seconded by Councillor Aboud. All those in favour? I declare that carried.
It's Hillary. I've been with Moreland Family Daycare for 8 months now and I absolutely love it. The main reason I started with family